Gone with the Wind, gone from HBO. Hannibal takes a bite out of Netflix. And the Internet Archive gets sued. All of this and more tonight on the Real Super Geeks. We almost didn't do the animated opener.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Super Geeks. We're joined by this week by one of our returning co-hosts, Raul Padron, or as I like to call him in honor of Star Trek Discovery, Raul the Baul. And Raul, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Good to be back.
Excellent. I hope you haven't gotten any COVID.
Not yet. But there's always next week. Right. There's always next week.
There's always next week. We'll check in with you then, too. Speaking of COVID, let's introduce our next co-host, and that's Jason Kovalik. Jason, how are you doing this week?
Fantastic. First week back in the office.
That's probably a little surreal, isn't it?
It's just like 8 of us, and it's, an office for 200, so it's kind of
wow,
weird. But yeah, it's good to be around other people in real life, other than my wife and my kid that I know.
It's like being around after the
it hit the corner. The COVID hit the corner. I'm just saying. I'm very excited by that. I hate you so much, Jason, right now. Speaking of real people, we've got Sean O'Halloran with us from Las Vegas, Nevada. Sean, how are you doing this week? And most importantly, are you wearing pants?
I'm wearing short pants tonight. So
close enough.
Like pantaloons?
not quite pantaloons. That's reserved for Emperor Palpatine.
Catalans? No.
I'm wearing cargo shorts.
You're that guy.
I'm that
guy.
You're that guy.
I am that guy.
You are that guy. Speaking of that guy, joining us is our ever stalwart producer, Justin Burton, whose birthday it is today that we're recording the show. Justin, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you.
Yep.
You live in a zoo, etc.
Stolaf, nicht Gigianan.
Thank you.
I'm going to share that with the folks at home, Jason, who just messaged everybody in the chat on Zoom to say, I too am wearing cargo shorts. See, you've made this a safe space for cargo shorts, Sean.
No longer do dads have to hide in the corner with their cargo shorts.
Next week.
Cargo shorts. Hey, they're comfortable and practical. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That describes all dads.
So
Justin,
wearing pants, so that's a step up from as usual.
That indeed. Although he's been wearing a lot of pants lately.
I have. It's only because of a matter of timing.
Only a matter of time before he takes them off.
I mean, he is outside. His neighbors probably might call the cops if he was.
Well, I got plenty of brick walls around me, but the thing about it is that I don't really usually tell you guys this, but they do come off mid-show. They usually do. So.
I was not prepared
just
to
for
hear
theme's sake, well, though. It's not because he likes it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
He's in Las Vegas. It's hot there.
I have a reputation to uphold, gentlemen. I have a reputation to uphold. Okay.
The boys need some ventilation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
There's
Justin,
chaps for that.
yeah, right.
What do you think I'm wearing?
Are assless.
Okay, folks, let's focus right now on the important person, and that's Justin, because it's his birthday today. Justin, how old are you today?
I am 39.
Oh, you're still a baby.
Baby.
Well, happy birthday, Justin.
Show everybody what you're drinking, Justin.
Oh,
What is that?
Nice. It's
Mango
a
Margarita.
It's a mango-rita.
Celebrate,
I've got
brother.
some whiskey
Celebrate.
over there. I should probably run get some to celebrate your 39th birthday.
We should all get drunk
Speaking
on
of
the
39
show.
birthdays, this is actually a non
I
sequitur,
recommend
but
it.
I couldn't think of a better transition. Is our next co-host, and that is the inimitable Contrarian, our former mascot index, Sun Seal. Sun, how are you this week?
Hi, everybody. So last week I was stuck in a GDI base. This week I appear to be on the Voyager bridge for some reason.
It's because you love Janeway so much.
I guess. I'm starting to feel like this is Quantum Leap or something.
And then you're supposed to say, "Oh boy."
Yeah.
Wait, need to be on the Enterprise bridge then?
I don't know.
Well.
Which Enterprise?
NX-01.
There's been so many to choose from.
NX-01, guys. Enterprise Bridge,
What's
Sam
that, dog?
Beckett, Scott Bakula. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta explain this joke. This is really sad.
No,
I want him.
that's why I said, "Oh boy."
You did, but no. But everybody said Enterprise, like they didn't know which one we were talking about.
I know
Look,
what-
you can't help that we're
Sam.
all young next to some old geezers, okay?
Ugh. Captain Archer leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong. Wait, wrong
We
show.
get it, Sean.
I'm gonna keep killing it until somebody finally gives me a chuckle.
Okay, you got it.
Perfect.
All right, and last but not least, our favorite fidget spinner from Colorado, Travis Litton. How are you this week, Travis? I always want to know what's upsetting you this week. So, anything riling you up this week?
A bunch of little shit.
Like Canada not
Family
letting you
food.
into the country to see your girlfriend?
That too. I mean,
Fuck Canada.
Oh, way to out him. Way to out him, Carlos.
Long story short, I almost felt like I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown earlier this week, but a few puzzles of Sudoku calmed me down, and here I am, and I'm ready to geek out with everyone. And I'm not sure you introduced Ross, honestly.
Do I mean so little to you, Carlos?
Yeah. I would have. Don't worry, my eyes would have bounced up to that corner eventually, and finally, the eyebrows of doom himself, Ross Bullock. How are you, Ross?
I am wired and frustrated. Prior to the show tonight, I was streaming Gears Tactics, and now I'm on the 12th attempt at taking down the final boss. So, yeah.
Well,
It's the worst. It's the
I've
worst.
seen him do it both streams, and it's just hilarious. You didn't get your virtual cookie. So.
The odds, the RNG is not in my favor. But
The
that's
odds-
games like that for you. Sometimes you can do everything right and still fail.
That is not a failure. I mean,
That's a Picard's
I
quote.
messed up the quote, damn it. I killed it.
Well, it's true for Gears Tactics, especially XCOM. Oh boy, XCOM. Whew.
Oof. A collective oof. All right, well, let's get started with our topics this week, some of which are boiling over from the chaos plaguing the U.S. this week. We'll start off with our first topic of the week, and that was the news that Hartley Sawyer, who is the actor who plays Elongated Man on The Flash, was summarily dismissed from his role on that show after it was discovered that he'd made a series of misogynistic and racist tweets back in, I'm blanking on how long ago it was,
2012.
Yeah,
Yep.
2012.
8 years ago.
And so he was fired, causing all kinds of reactions on both left, right, and in the center as well, as people reacting to, on top of everything else going on in the world this week. It was sort of a reflection of the, well, some would call it rising consciousness, others would call it rising groupthink around racial issues. So what do you all think about No More Elongated Man on The Flash and the circumstances of his departure? Who'd like to start us off? I'm going to start off with you, son.
I think this is Karen culture in action.
Any more you want to say about that?
I really don't I really disagree with firing somebody for like almost 10-year-old tweets just because the culture flipped in the last 3 or 4.
So can I speak on that? So you don't believe in removing the statues of Confederate generals, am I right?
I believe in selling them off, that's for sure.
Because that would be changing later when the culture changes.
Yeah, but a statue's not a person.
It was a person.
No, it wasn't.
It's
A
always
statue
a
has
statue.
Not
never been a
literally,
person.
but it's of a person.
It's a
who
symbol.
lived.
It's a symbol of a person.
There's you can't removing a statue to firing someone because of statements they made.
Why?
because when someone takes a job, usually a condition of their employment, especially in the entertainment industry, is that they don't do anything to embarrass their employer. It's part of almost every single employment agreement that I've ever signed, especially when I was in the military and with my last job at a freaking grocery store. They monitor social media to make sure people don't say anything inflammatory about their employer. And
Okay,
if
your
an
point is?
employee makes a statement that is embarrassing to the employer, they have the right to terminate employment.
And they did.
Now, that being said, sorry to steal your thunder, son. I'll toss it back to you in a second. But, well, this one's, I don't know. I really don't.
These tweets were out there, right? I mean, it wasn't like a case of like him hiding them, or I mean, this was just a case of someone finding, someone going back far enough.
This is completely Karen culture. They went digging for something.
I mean, do you realize how hard it is to do that?
We don't.
This happened to a director. I think it was for
James Gunn, dude.
Yeah, it happened to James Gunn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he got his job back.
He got his job back.
Yep, after the dust settled and everything.
I
calmed
do
down,
believe that
rehired him.
the circumstances are slightly different here than with James Gunn.
No, it's not. The only difference is time.
Let him finish, and then you can argue.
Oh,
Go ahead, Travis.
Well, reason why I'm a bit more defensive of James Gunn is the fact that the people bringing up the tweets were saying that they were basically, if I remember correctly, a good majority of them were jokes based on pedophilia and rape, if I'm remembering correctly.
Some of them were, yeah.
I would feel very differently about him getting his job back if he had people actually accusing him of rape or pedophilia, like in action or whatnot. But the thing is, no one was accusing him. He had no accusers. He made some stupid tweets for shock humor, and you know what? I do believe in reformation and change. I do believe that firing this guy, I mean, I don't watch The Flash. I don't know who Elongated Man is, so I'm not really super in touch, but I could say that firing him may have been a bit of a harsh thing. Like, I remember a sports story a few years ago of a major league pitcher who, I guess someone dug up some dirt on his Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and he didn't lose his job, but they did force him to go. And, basically they had him take a few classes on social tolerance and
sensitivity classes, as it were.
Basically, like if the guy who played Elongated Man has changed, go send him to a few classes. I'm sure he'll be fine. Don't really know much about the guy. I have no idea if he's come forward and said that's not who I am anymore.
He did. He issued an apology. Let me read his apology. It was fairly short. He said he posted this on Instagram, saying, "My words, irrelevant of being meant with an intent of humor, were hurtful and unacceptable. I'm ashamed I was capable of these really horrible attempts to get attention at that time. I regret them deeply. This was not acceptable behavior. These were words I threw out at the time with no thought or recognition of the harm my words could do and now have done today."
Well, in that case, I would probably say, his apology seems genuine. I would say, send him to a few classes. Don't let it happen again, that kind of thing. But I mean, it is what it is.
I'm very torn on this. I understand the studio's position on this, and why they feel they have to do this. I just don't like the fact that we're at this point. By the same token, we're seeing this a lot where guys who were literal nobodies in 2012, like James Gunn, and now what's homeboy's name here? I don't even know his
Hartley Sawyer.
Thank you, Hartley Sawyer. Okay, these guys were James Gunn too back then, were nobodies, and this seems to be these tweets and the social media was done simply for attention at the time. And it's like, now we're living in a 8 years later, we're living in a period of time where nobody does that. Nobody would do that. So, I don't, obviously I don't agree with what he did, but it just seems to me that looking back 8 years ago, just watching like sitcoms and things like that from 8 years ago. Like, for example, I've been watching Community, and I'm watching, and I'm seeing all these with Chevy Chase's character in particular on Community, and how the jokes that they wrote for him on a network show would never fly today. And this is just, we're talking a show that started in 2008 because of the sexist, misogynist, racist, and homophobic nature of them. None of this would work today. So it's kind of like I understand their position now, but I think context is important in considering, the era that it was, if you will, socially acceptable and even media
in 2012. I'm sorry, that was only 8 years ago.
Well, no, but people.
Yeah, the culture has changed that much.
It really has. I agree with some.
I would argue that the culture changed that much in 3 months.
3 months, exactly. I agree. And
no, what I'm saying though is it was not acceptable in any way in 2012. The ramifications may be different today, but the acceptability of it, I'm
not saying I'm not condoning it. What I'm saying is
I'm not saying you're condoning it.
What I'm saying is that culturally, and even in the media, in our different forms of entertainment, that it was much more pervasive just 8 years ago than it was now. Like I said, one
could argue that in the age of Trump, it's actually more pervasive today. You're hearing a lot more outright racist things being said by some people.
Pervasive. Okay, I guess you could argue
that. From his
but
nomination to today, we've seen a huge uptick.
We've also seen a huge amount of social awareness about it as well. That I think people just kind of like, they kind of just like let it. It's kind of like the how do I put this? It's like it's like your old uncle at Thanksgiving who says incredibly inappropriate things all the time, and you just kind of let it go. Where you don't let the old uncle get away with that anymore.
But the old uncle is the president.
I was about to say that. But we don't, though. And we don't. Look, here's the thing. I subscribe. I'm probably one of the few people that actually pays for a subscription to an actual newspaper. Not their digital form, at least. I'm a subscriber to the Washington Post. And every Washington Post article is on the top of my feed on Facebook because I have it set up that way. And article after article after article after article calling out this kind of behavior. And I'm not criticizing, I'm pointing this out that, where this in 2012, it doesn't even garner a story on the back page, where now we're much more cognizant of it and more sensitive to it. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's just the nature of it.
No, I agree with what you're saying there. I mean, about, characterizing what things are like today. I'm just saying it's not such a stretch from 2012 in terms of the kinds of things people were saying. The reaction to it has certainly changed.
So
in the last 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not going to get that reaction in 2012, that kind of, the vilification out of it, then it encourages more of the same behavior is what I'm getting.
Here's what I think is pretty poignant. Grant Gustin, Instagram, did the statement that was issued by the showrunner, Eric Wallace, and there was a comment that was made in that reply to Grant Gustin's Instagram from a post named whole_lotta_toast. And it says, in the show, we know Ralph wasn't a great person, but people change and everyone deserves a second chance. In real life, screw that guy.
Yeah, it's not. He's not wrong.
Would you all change your idea if this was not a white guy? Just putting it out there, because it's been very. There's been a lot of forgiving. There's been a lot of forgiving attitudes, but I don't see a lot of forgiving attitudes if the person is of color or a minority or disabled.
I was the first person to say that. Hold on. I was the first person to say that Kevin Hart should not have to stop hosting the Oscars. I was the first person to say that because
But he got it worse. He got it much worse.
Right, and I agree, and I was against that. I'm way more against what happened to Kevin Hart than I am about this guy right here, to be honest. Because I mean,
go ahead, Travis.
Oh, I was just waving to Ross's Susanna or hi Susanna.
Hi Susanna.
I mean, as far as the Kevin Hart thing, I don't know anything about what that story is. If I remember correctly, it has something to do with the Oscars.
Yes.
I don't watch the Oscars. I don't follow them, and
I don't either. But the point being is that he got fired from the Oscars or asked to resign, if I recall correctly, over I think it was a routine of his, which had gay jokes in it. But I can't exactly recall the entire details of it right now.
The basis of that joke was that if he had a son that turned out to be gay and asked him for a dollhouse, he would wind up beating his son's ass with the dollhouse. The whole premise of the joke is that Kevin Hart literally went out and bought a dollhouse for his son.
Well, I mean, as far as to answer Raul's question, sorry.
Well, I mean, his what he tried to say, after this came up was that there's the joke was really more about him than anything else, and that how his perceptions, his perspective on homosexuality and not and what he needs to work on. If I recall correctly, son, you probably have this in front of you right now, and do you recall that being
the big thing about Kevin Hart's comedy sketch from that point in time is that was a black cultural thing. You ain't gay in the black culture, and at that point in time, you weren't gay. And it's changed.
Yeah, and
it's changed significantly.
His point was that he wouldn't know how to deal with it. That was his point.
Right.
But
everybody. Let me make it very clear. Everybody has the choice to put out material they want to represent them from now and forever. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that it was 8 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago. It is what they believed at the time, and they should be held to that standard. If they're going to make that,
not allowed to change. Is that not the whole point of Super Geeks?
No, it's not about change. It's about a popular figure making a statement against a small minority.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Is that wonderful?
Well,
20 years ago.
But Raul, this is my question. Where's the clock on this? I mean, if it's not called out at the time, where is the clock? And I'm asking questions here. I'm not taking a side on this because, like I said, I completely understand the studio's position on this. But I'm asking the question here. Where is the clock? I mean, I'm curious as to what other people think about this. Do we really hold something against someone for 20, 30 years ago? They said that gets dug up.
It's 20, 40 years ago. It's not 8 years ago.
But 8 years ago is still a long period of time.
No, it's not. Not really.
No, the older you get, the less time that matters. It's a blink of an eye.
You better not dig up anything in my past, then.
So is the magical number is the magical number 9 years then, because it was 10-year-old tweets from Gunn.
Yeah, I mean, this is my
I'm not
question.
supporting I'm not supporting for them taking gun back either.
Because
What's the magic number on this?
Because even
I don't think
according
it's
to
number. I think it's actions. I think it's behavior, and I think it's about how what stance you take on how you were before. We have no real indication that that Hartley Sawyer has changed, other than his
Bingo.
apology, which I actually believe is sincere, and I think that was the smartest thing he could have done. If he had started making himself into a victim of cancel culture, blah, 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 I would have a lot less respect for him. He will be able to come back. Trust me on this.
Right.
He will be able to come back because he's taking his lumps. He's taking responsibility for what he said. And he's not trying to blame other people for what has happened to him. And that's him being smart.
Right.
Now, on the part of the producers, you know, we are living in a place where the culture has radically changed in 3 months. And yes, that's a reality. And when you are in charge of a show that is watched every week by millions and millions of people, you have a certain kind of responsibility, more than a single person with a single Twitter account, because what you choose to do, what you choose to say, who you choose to hire, how you choose to portray things has an effect on millions of people. And yes, you're going to be held to a higher standard because of that, and you should be.
Can I ask a quick question? I hypothetically speaking here, because you brought up a good point that of course, the apology was the best route for him. But the bigger issue I have here is, and this is something they never do, it's always a matter of the apology comes after the fact that they got caught. If he had gotten ahead of this way before, like in 2013, and said, you know what, I said some really shitty things on my Twitter. I shouldn't have said them. They were terrible. If he had gotten ahead of this before it had to be uncovered,
Yes.
would our position be different? That's my question.
That would be mine. It would be mine.
That assumes consciousness of things that you tweet.
Right, exactly.
I don't remember some of the things that I tweet about last week. So so if I'm concerned about something that I might have tweeted 8 years ago, I don't really remember it unless I go back and dig through my Twitter and try and, you know, clear it.
Wasn't his Twitter?
If I want to go scrub my Twitter.
Well, wasn't his Twitter deleted anyways? Whenever this was found,
The tweet is now deleted. Yes,
it was, but it was out there until it was discovered.
It's quite possible he forgot about these things that he said.
Right, and I think and that in itself.
But please note, he is not making that excuse.
No, I understand that. I understand. Yeah. I'm not.
He's taking responsibility for what he said and why he said it.
Right. Through actors and anybody's Twitter, going back years looking for something for somebody's what this was.
But
we don't actually know, do we, what the circumstances of the discovery of this were? Do we know? I mean, we did with Gunn. We have with others. With Gunn, we knew there was because of his liberal positions on a lot of things.
And Gunn took. Go ahead, son.
Okay, so both articles link to a single Twitter account, with the Twitter account basically having said, "I'm not affiliated with the CW. Here's a bunch of these tweets that I screen grabbed."
Who is it though?
A person who has. By the way, when all of these were initially posted, of course, set their Twitter to. What is it? Protected?
Private, yeah.
Yeah, protected. So, because, getting backlash already. Whose now seemed to delete those tweets entirely at this point. Because the link in both of the articles says that tweet itself no longer exists, or those tweet chains no longer exist.
Right, so it was clear it was targeted. But, I mean, regardless, again, this is what he did effectively, and I'm not taking anything away from the apology because I thought it was a good apology. He's taking his lumps on it, like Carlos said, but he kind of let the close the barn door after the horses were already back home. So, I mean, it just leaves you to question, would this apology have come had he gotten in front of it? I mean, would this apology?
It didn't help Kevin Hart.
No, it didn't.
Well, Kevin Hart never apologized. He never said I was wrong. He never said I was being insensitive. He never said I'm not. Well, he did say I'm not homophobic, but of course that was also after the fact when it was in his interest to say he was not homophobic. And just to be clear on the facts around Kevin Hart, what came to light was not just simply his routine, which yes may in fact be done in mostly black audience for mostly black audiences, and and so there's a cultural context as Sun was correctly pointing out, but it came to light because of tweets that he did publicly everywhere, not just black culture tweets. So I think that's a little different than, it's much more similar to what we're seeing in the case of Hartley Sawyer. And I think it's an important context to bear in mind that it was not just things he said within a certain cultural context. He said them on Twitter out loud to the entire world. And given that they were tweeted out with no context, what they read like was something deeply offensive and homophobic.
I did not know about the tweets. I will tell you that right now. I
love Twitter. Not.
The thing is, people do need to be responsible for things they say publicly.
Yeah.
Like you, Sean, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush here, but
that's my
but sure. But the reality is that television shows, things, when your employer is part of the media that literally can change the way people think, or literally gives permission for people to behave or think in certain ways, then you have to be especially careful about the public profile and what people are going to conclude about you if you don't take some kind of action. We have to remember is Hartley Sawyer is not entitled to a job at the Flash. He's not. Okay. No one's taking away something that he is entitled to. They're saying we have to be responsible for what you have to be responsible for. He's taking responsibility. That's great. And I think in the future, you'll probably see a comeback from him. But for them to have done nothing would have been, in the light of these things coming public, would have been
disastrous is what it would have been.
Yeah.
And I will say this too. I don't think anybody gives a shit. I don't think anybody gives a shit whether he has a job. I don't think it has anything to do with it. People like their TV shows and they like their characters, and that's what it comes down to. It's all very selfish.
Well,
their motivations for
elongated, man.
For the defense.
Shapeshifter. All they gotta do is just get a new actor and come up with some X, Y, Z reason why.
Yeah, seriously, that talk about the easiest role they have to replace.
How many Black Canaries have they had on Arrow?
Right.
Yeah. 3, exactly. I think.
How many White Canaries? Look how many Sarah Lances they had. They had at least 2. 3.
How many?
Well, we're up to 3 Spocks now.
Look, okay. So even in the midst of them having fired Elongated Man, we've already seen them go after the other guy, Arrow.
Stephen Amell.
Yeah, accusing him of racism.
He's not even doing anything right now, but now they're going to try to go after him again.
Well, could you refresh my memory
again,
on this?
I feel like I have to say this every week. I'm not a big fan of people painting with broad brushes. The they. Who is the they? You're trying to equate the they who fired Hartley Sawyer with the they who apparently are going after Stephen Amell, whatever that's about. They're different theys. They're different people. They're different motivations.
It's a culture of getting someone fired over this or that.
You can put it that way, but you can also argue on the other side that it's a culture of having people take responsibility for their words and actions.
Bingo.
If you find out something about someone who is in a position of power that when it becomes public, that if you don't do something about it, it will reflect on you then you need to take action about that. And that's the position that the producers of The Flash took. They weren't out
Oh, he hit the corner again.
to fire Hartley Sawyer. By all
Last thing they wanted
indications, they liked him. He was a good character. He was an interesting character. They didn't want to have to do it.
So one of the accusers was comics author T. Franklin, who called the Green Arrow actor out by writing, F. Stephen Amell, he's been showing us his racist ass ways for quite a while, and his wife. Also, Grant Gustin isn't absolved, because he definitely didn't support and speak out for Candace. Focusing around the ridiculous role of Candace had in last season of Flash.
Yeah, apparently everybody's up in arms over Candace's reduced role of last season, and she's not a likable character anyways, because everybody was mad because Iris didn't have this big old the same amount of screen time as everybody else last season, so it's so stupid. Now they're all up in arms trying to get people in trouble over it, saying it's a racial thing and everything like that. That they're being discriminated against. I mean, it's getting to the point where it doesn't end. Where will it end?
When people stop making comments. Isn't that the obvious answer?
You know what? Let's all just laugh at racist Sorelli right now.
Who?
What now?
What next?
In other news?
Next.
Yeah, that's other news. He's that NASCAR driver that quit.
Right, the guy who nobody knows, but it's a big deal.
The guy that even NASCAR said, where should we send your participation trophy?
Brilliant, by the way.
It's not real, guys. That's fake.
Was that fake?
It's completely fake. It was made by a sports satire site. It's completely fake.
That's funny.
What completely fake?
In other news, but in a similar vein,
the tweet and the NASCAR response are both fake.
Oh, the NASCAR response, I know that was satire, but I loved it.
Yeah, but his tweet wasn't what it's pinned to either. It was a different tweet entirely. But it was, the in between the lines message was the same, but it was.
He actually ended up deleting his Twitter account over it, though.
Yep. I mean, I'm just so glad this entire week has been filled by a nobody who drives NASCAR in a truck that literally no one knows.
It's been better than what it's been filled with, that's for sure.
Well, this is an interesting show so far.
Indeed. Well, okay. I think we've laid out the different positions here, and I know this won't be the end of it, because we're going to see other things like this happen, as you're pointing out with Stephen Amell and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the cultural change that we're talking about is a good thing on the whole, in that people will now see that there are repercussions for things that they say, and that they were able to get away with because the culture was not, was going out of its way to not deal with that, with those issues. And now it is front and center, and we'll see if that holds true going into the future. But at the same time, to be fair, like many cultural changes, there are ways to weaponize them, and that happens too. And so
scrub your Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
just get rid of the social media altogether,
or be smart like me and never had a Twitter in the first place.
Suppose.
Well, you still have Facebook, and that's then
that is not much either. Okay, well, let's go to our next topic then, unless anyone has any final words on this one. This was an interesting thing, apparently, that was just published. And my computer does not seem to want to be helpful to me right now. But I will tell you what the story is, and as soon as my computer cooperates, I will show you the appropriate graphic. And that is the news that there is now an official map of the Star Wars galaxy, showing where all these planets are with respect to one another and so forth. And apparently it was published in a book that is considered canon. I'm never quite sure.
Anything that came out since Disney bought it is canon, is what it comes down to.
Okay.
Everything
So-
that came before is called legends.
It's legends, right? It's
Right.
not officially not canon, but if there's
Well,
story,
it's canon for legends.
yeah. I mean, if on screen contradicts, it's no longer canon. Basically,
Yeah.
how the legend stuff works.
There are tiers of Star Wars canon.
Oh, good God.
So my computer finally worked, and you can see now what this galaxy looks like. It looks like the most boring galaxy I've ever seen, frankly. But there you have it. That's where things are. You can see where the rim is and everything
I see
on
the
there.
medium space. I see the Romulan space. I see the Klingon territory and the Federation. Oh,
This is where, and over here's where Voyager's.
Here's Voyager's track across Borg space, etc.
To say that I have the hardest trouble. I have the hardest trouble interpreting Star Trek maps. I don't care about Star Wars maps.
Yeah, I mean, I always felt like Star Wars' lack of specificity about where things were relative to one another was actually one of its redeeming charms.
It's one of
Yeah,
its charms.
because you didn't worry about, like, that was at least one canon thing that people didn't raise their arms up about, unlike Star Trek, which I can tell you from having written Star Trek for fan films, where you're trying to respect canon and you realize there's actually no canon around the galactic map. At one point there wasn't even quadrants. Now there are quadrants. And so it's hard to, so what I did is I essentially picked one and just tried to be consistent in everything that I wrote, in all the episodes that I wrote about where things were relative to one another, and just stuck with one. But
Yeah,
there are a lot of different ones out there.
Right, with Trek, the only canon map that's ever been shown of the galaxy was shown on the display screen in Deep Space Nine. That's literally the only time you'll ever see it.
Yeah, and
There's
it's,
one.
that's
There's
the one
one in
everyone
TNG,
uses.
or sorry, TOS.
yeah, but
Oh.
TOS didn't.
But that was just
Well, you had
relation
the one in
to Federation space and Romulan space.
That's
Yeah,
it.
the one
That
in
was a very
Conspiracy.
small slice of the.
Right. The DS9 one has the one that's in the 4 quadrants broken
Yeah.
up that makes it all down.
And then you had some in Discovery during the Klingon War.
Yes, Discovery had some as well.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's based on the same one from DS9, though, I believe.
One of the things about Star Wars that they're good enough to build a world, but they're smart enough to leave it open.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Star Trek, I think Star Trek's biggest problem is that I think they get too specific.
Over definition.
Right, over definition. When you go to Batuu, I mean, if I don't know if you've been to Batuu, the planet Batuu, and
Hey, who
That's where
has
Galaxy's
really?
Edge is, right?
yeah, the Black Spire outpost.
Looks
I
a
mean-
lot like Jordan, but go ahead. Yeah,
Or
But-
Los Angeles.
right.
But you go and you feel immersed because of the lack of specificity around all of the worlds in Star Wars. That's why they can do something like that with Star Wars. And I think it would be much more problematic to try to do something like that with Star Trek. Because if you were to try to recreate Deep Space Nine, I know they did like the promenade, but even then that wasn't like an exact recreation. And you look at it and it fails. And so it keeps you from experiencing living the world. And so I think that's the advantage of Star Wars. Their lack of specificity leaves it open enough to the imagination.
Yeah.
Well,
it's-
they're telling different kinds of stories, and
Right.
we don't have to belabor the, one is science fiction, the other is more science fantasy, but it does change the type of stories that you're telling, and Star Trek tries to tell stories where distance matters, where things are relative to one another matters, and in Star Wars, the only thing that really matters is what's in the middle and what's on the edge. And
Slow ass
that's about
space
it.
chase, cross half the galaxy in 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I was about to say Jason, sitting in tonight for Jason Kovalik is Ronald D. Moore, because he said the exact same thing, and he's right in that, Star Trek's, one of its greatest advantages over other franchises is its continuity and its long, rich history and attention to detail, to scientific detail. But it's one of its biggest curses too, because it makes it inaccessible to a lot of people, because a lot of people don't want to get that deep into the fucking galaxy map of the Milky Way with the 4 quadrants and where the Klingons are and where the Bajorans are and where the Dominion is. Nobody gives a shit in Star Wars when they come into that. Not nobody, but there's the majority of Star Wars fans, and I say this as a Star Wars fan too, that I don't go into it for that. I go to Star Trek for that. So it's nice that it's out there. It's fine, but it's not a deal breaker for me either way with Star Wars.
Some
I do have
people do go for that though. I know of several Star Wars YouTubers who totally geek out over maps and where things are specifically, and who sometimes complain about relocating things on maps, but don't make too big a deal about it.
Well, I'll make this point that I've made before about back in the '90s when TNG was at its height. Literally 2% of the fan base of TNG, and this is not a joke, out of the 14 million people that are watching every week, 2% were fans that were considered actual fans and not just casual audience viewers. And what that means by a fan is people that actually dedicate their time and money into the franchise other than just watching it once a week. And I'd say that with Star Wars, there's a much lower percentage than even that 2%. That it's, like, you think my 8-year-old cares where Batuu is or where Kashyyyk is?
Batuu.
I'm sorry, Batuu.
But
that, I mean, but yeah, there are the diehard fans that get into it. I understand that, but I'm saying that I'd say it's a smaller number than the people who consume the actual product.
So not to be nitpicky and all, but this book that this map comes from is specifically around, Batuu, and it's supposed to add to the Galaxy's Edge experience, which is set during the, First Order Resistance period. And I'm looking at this map and I'm noticing one big glaring error, and that's the fact that the Alderaan system is still there.
Well, the system hasn't gone away.
The system is still there. It's just the planet's gone.
I think it's Alderaan 2. I believe.
By the way, did anybody else notice that the hut space looks like a twisted Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, it does. Holy shit!
Now you can't unsee it.
I noticed that Kashyyyk is in Dominion territory.
Actually, no. I'm sorry. If we're comparing the two maps, that is not Dominion territory. That's clearly Herodian territory. Thank you, son. Okay.
Oh man.
Dominion territory over where
I have to play Star Trek Online to catch up with this conversation.
That's not Herodian territory. That's the Ferengi. That's the Ferengi Imperium.
I'm gonna have to take issue with that.
See that little yellow ring on the inside? It's going to get heated. That's what's left of Cardassian space.
It's going to get
so
ugly.
Would that make the core the Federation?
Mm-hmm. Core's always the Federation.
We're headed for a planet called Tatatoot.
All right. So who's glad, by way of winding up this topic, who's glad we now have a galactic map, a map for that galaxy far, far away, and who doesn't give a crap?
I'd rather see more maps of Middle Earth, to be completely honest with you, than this.
Okay. Jason, what about you? I know you're a big Batuu fan.
I am.
Any excuse.
He just wants to be Mace
whip it
Windu.
out.
He just wants to be Mace Windu.
Is that a bad
He
thing?
does. Sean, how about you? Do you care?
I would rather have the map to your heart.
Oh, the way you talk. Travis?
Meh.
Meh. Eyebrows of Doom?
Meh.
Meh. Okay. Justin, stalwart producer? Meh. And Son?
Can I get the political map for navigating the world right now? Thank you.
That one might be more helpful. All right.
By the way, I got a fat alert. By the way, for you, Carlos.
Uh-oh.
You have been called out by David O'Neill. He says this is your favorite book.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna have to think of a good one for that. Okay, next item is a quick news item, and that is the news that the 2020 year-ending Doctor Who episode, they managed to finish shooting right before the everything shut down from the coronavirus, and so it's presumably in post-production at this point. But
is this going to be another one of those New Year's Day specials? Please,
you know,
God,
they
no.
have been very cagey about exactly when it's going to air. I'm not sure it'll be ready in time, given the delays that we're seeing in post production and everything.
Wait. So you're telling me they didn't actually have a season finale this season?
No, you know that every holiday season they have a holiday special.
Okay, so is it? I got that, but so this is just the holiday special.
Yeah, it's the holiday special.
Okay, so there actually was a season finale because
Yes.
I pre-ordered the Blu-ray set a long time ago.
Oh,
I'm really
okay.
sad if I don't get my final episode of the season in there.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
there was
Okay.
a final episode of the season.
I don't mind buying the extra one for the holiday. They sucker you with that in every year too. But okay, that's fine.
I'm just skeptical that it'll be ready in time. Anybody else?
I'm indifferent, to be honest.
I mean, I can
Is
tell
that-
you. I mean, I can tell you that the studios are doing everything they can to get back into production.
Sure.
And I mean, I have ways of knowing that, but that they're running to get into production as quickly as possible.
Yes, they certainly want to. I mean, there's certain realities that they're hard realities that they're running into that aren't. You can get over them, but they make things more expensive and take more time. Just insurance, for example, for people who get sick on set, just the logistics of, people being able to wash hands and hand sanitizer and masks and all of the, and you can't really social distance on a movie set. So all those things are practical realities that just make things take longer and therefore cost more money.
Yep,
So
for sure.
So what that looks like for end users like us is, does that mean movies will be more expensive? Does that mean, cable or Netflix or whatever will become more expensive because the shows have become more expensive? No one knows yet, but don't be surprised. You heard it here first. Okay, so unless anyone has any other opinions on Doctor Who's 2020 year-end special, or if you technically want to call it the 2021 year beginning special, depending on what they decide this year. Personally, I thought putting it in New Year's was a mistake. Keeping it Christmas was better, but we'll see. So anyone have a final word before we move to our next topic?
Please, somebody get a different showrunner / writer.
Yep, agreed.
All right. Well, for our next topic, no one put it better than our own Eyebrows of Doom. That Gone with the Wind is gone from HBO Max.
For now.
Yeah.
So the classic 1939 film, one of the few color films that came out at that time, which paints a picture of the South pre and during the Civil War, has been pulled by HBO Max from its on-screen offerings temporarily. They say that they will be bringing it back with ways of creating a historical context around what people view, and I don't think they gave a timeline for when that will happen, because I think they have to figure out what that actually looks like. So we'll see when that does happen. Meanwhile, we know that despite it being removed from HBO Max, that sales and rental of it on places like Amazon have shot it up to, was it number one?
Number one on
week?
Amazon, yeah.
Yeah. So for people who are saying it's censorship, doesn't seem to be censorship to me if you can still get to it. So anyway, opinions. What do people think about Gone with the Wind being gone temporarily?
Well, if they do what they did with the Tom and Jerry collection, they're probably just going to add a disclaimer at the beginning explaining framing Gone with the Wind with its context, that it was created during a time when certain racial prejudices and prototypes were common and accepted, and that they were wrong then, they were wrong today, and here it is in its entirety, because editing these things out and censoring them would be as bad as saying that these prejudices did not exist. So that's what I'm expecting out of it.
Ross just took everything I wanted to say out of my mouth. You bastard! You don't get a cookie this week.
And in a lot of ways, honestly, the those that have tried going back and editing stuff like that actually makes it worse. Have you guys seen some of the edited Mr. Magoo episodes?
No.
They changed the Asian butler and gave him an American accent, and it's 10 times cringier than just having the stereotyped Asian accent.
Well, and here's the thing: if you try and edit Gone with the Wind, you're editing out some very huge accomplishments. For example, I don't know, I can't remember the specifics, but the woman who played the slave woman in
You won an Academy Award for it.
Patty
she
McDonald.
was one of the
McDonald.
first African American Academy Award winners.
I think
for
she
that
was the
role.
first.
Was the first.
The first.
Yeah.
The
The
first.
first for a supporting role.
That is incredible. That is huge, and she's a marvelous actress.
And that's kind of the irony of this, is that how incredibly, when did Gone with the Wind come out?
1939.
Okay. In 1939, that Hollywood was progressive enough for the industry to give her the best supporting actress Academy Award. I mean, so that's kind of the irony of this, is that for what the milestone, the trailblazing thing that she did, that is what's causing the today them to look back at this and want to and have to remove it and then put the disclaimer on the front of it. So it's like I have noticed, I've never even seen the film. I said this earlier. It's because I cringe at the idea of sitting through 3 hours and 42 minutes. Like I literally go into convulsions thinking about it. But I did note that I do sit through Lawrence of Arabia, and it's because it's at 6 minutes.
It has an intermission.
Right? Yeah, that's right. It does.
And Omar Sharif, which always helps.
I mean, did you watch any of the Lord of the Ring movies, Sean?
Yeah, but they're not 3 hours and 42
Yes,
minutes.
they
Oh,
are.
not that long.
Holy crap.
The enhanced
4
editions.
hours.
Okay. Yeah,
You've never done a marathon of all 3 enhanced editions?
God,
You
no.
did. I did. New Year's Day, 2007.
Oh.
Anyway, I guess one thing I could add to Ross's sentiment is that I also I agree with the approach of them putting a little disclaimer at the beginning of the film saying these are wrong then, they're wrong now, but we don't feel that ignoring them or removing them would be doing any favors or would be the right approach. It just actually got me thinking about an old holiday special that my family would put on every year around New Year's Day. We would watch the old movie Holiday Inn.
I was just thinking
Yep.
about that.
Well,
Oh my God.
For those who don't know, there's a very infamous section of this movie where Bing Crosby and
Fred Astaire and
Fred
Blackface,
Astaire
right?
wasn't in that specific number.
oh, that's true. That's
What
true.
movie are we talking about
Bing
now?
Crosby,
Holiday Inn.
Bing
Holiday Inn.
Crosby and his I can't remember her name, but his love interest put on blackface and do a number with
For Lincoln's birthday.
for Lincoln's birthday. And my family would always have a little bit of an interesting discussion about the subject, about just how times were different then, and just how unacceptable it is now. And I mean, the way I see it, I feel like those discussions kind of helped, they helped me and my sisters, grow to understand a bit more about the issues and understand a bit more of just how to approach them, and how I think I'm getting a clear picture here. But I mean, I have the Tom and Jerry collections, and I always love seeing Whoopi Goldberg at the beginning of those things, explaining just her stance on it all. And if they take a similar approach, then good. I feel like discussion of these stereotypes and these things can be very beneficial.
Yeah, this leads into my question about this, because my point about having never seen this film, I'm not I don't have any kind of context to base how bad these portrayals are in this film. I mean, it's not Birth of a Nation bad, is it?
No,
The issue
no.
is
The
It's not. It's
issue
different.
with Gone with the Wind is that it glorifies an idea that is historically inaccurate.
Mhm.
The-
about
basically,
what the
yeah.
South was like.
about
Yes.
antebellum South, right? So the whole notion is that slaves were happy, right? So it's the same thing as like Song of the South and other like deeply concerning films, But I do think that context or that viewpoint in American history, it's important to capture that, and it's important to understand as we march from being a nation of white supremacy. It's important for us to understand where we've made stops at in our progression, so we know how far we've come, and realistically, it helps us chart where we need to go.
I think
agree.
very well put, Jason. And
Yep.
and Travis, now I get to be mad at you like you were mad at Ross because you said what I wanted to say, which, context is
really?
everything. And you should take advantage of the opportunity to learn and to educate others and to discuss what you're seeing with other people, because I'm again in favor of holding the past responsible for what it's done. I'm not in favor of erasing the past just because it's offensive or inconvenient.
Right, I agree with that entirely.
Exactly. I mean, we got to learn from our mistakes. We got to see, like, look, this is how it used to be. We can't do this no more. This is what we need. We cannot be like that. We cannot be like they was. We have to be better than that.
I will refrain from a certain debate about this, but
I've always looked at Gone with the Wind as sort of an American attempt at kind of that British period drama almost. Just
Yeah, I can
like
see that.
way more Americanized.
Like glorifying colonialism type thing?
In a way.
Because
yeah.
Brits are big on that. British films are big on that.
But when I this is the same argument I've been making, Carlos, is that look, you can say something is bad and still have it available for people.
Yeah,
Because it needs to be available for people.
I totally agree.
If you erase all the hate, then guess what? You have no examples of hate to show when you're teaching it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too.
I mean, as an example, Birth of a Nation, as we mentioned before, is highly praised for its technical aspects as one of the first films to do a certain thing at a time, but in the context
as was
that,
Birth of the Nation, actually.
I just said Birth of the Nation.
That's what he
sorry, I
said.
thought you were still
That's what I'm
talking
talking
about.
about.
Okay, sorry.
Because of
Go ahead.
its
the program,
technical
Carlos.
aspects, but within the context that it is a bit of racist propaganda.
Birth of the Nation was also the first film showed at the White House under.
That's right.
Under
That's right, it was.
Eisenhower.
Yeah.
Not under Eisenhower.
No, it was under
No, I mean,
Wilson.
Wilson.
Wilson,
sorry.
who, by the way, was
Wilson,
a huge
Woodrow
racist.
Wilson.
So
He was.
he dealt some of the worst blows to middle-class black culture in Washington, D.C. by forbidding blacks from being in civil service. That set them back generations.
He did a lot. He did a lot of bad things that we still feel the implications of today.
And that
Federal
most
Reserve.
people don't know about.
Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a whole bigger topic.
Well,
But
on our next
but
show.
the point
That's your
is
topic for
that
next week.
Conspiracy theories with.
Hashtag free Song of the South.
you know what?
I
I
agree.
actually would love to see something.
I would like to see
I would
Song of the
lo-
South to
I've
be
never
reissued.
seen it before. The only time I have ever seen anything from Song of the South was a 90s VHS of Disney sing-along songs.
Yeah.
And it was Zippity
Zippity-doo-dah.
That's it.
Doo-dah.
The reason I like Song of the South is because it showcases Louis Armstrong, which
Yep.
I adore, and his voice is just crystal in the movie. And they used advanced technology on the recording for that movie.
Does anybody notice that all these racist things have these like super advanced shit going on?
Yeah, what is up with that?
Well, and here's the thing: like
Money.
Song of the South has been released outside of the U.S. on home video.
Mhm.
It just hasn't been released inside the U.S. on home video.
Yeah, it's like Agents of Shield. No, wait a minute.
What?
Yeah, you can't get Agents of Shield. I have to order from the UK to get Agents of Shield on Blu-ray. So yeah, that pisses me off no end. Completely different subject. I'm sorry.
I'm still waiting for a U.S. release of The Night They Saved Christmas.
I don't know
It was
what
like
that is.
the first Hallmark film ever.
Oh.
The
That
one
was
that
a long
started
time
it
ago.
all. Damn them.
I don't have enough liquor for this.
My sister-in-law lives for when the Hallmark Channel starts playing its Christmas movies. I think at the end of October.
Oh.
She just cannot get enough of them.
So the end of October. So a month and a half after Costco has Christmas trees in the floor.
Wait. No.
Oh.
The Hallmark restarted Christmas movies at the outset of the Corona.
They did.
stay-at-home
They
order.
did.
Yes.
No way.
Yes,
Yes, they
yeah.
did.
We had to get Sling so my wife could watch them.
Yep.
Just
They
what I
sure
need
did.
is another Candace Cameron Christmas story.
Don't tell Ray.
You know, I was
Ray,
actually
hi, Ray.
surprised that Tom Cavanaugh was in one of those.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting to see some of the actors that have been
Like,
in
holy
those.
shit, Wells, what are
I
you doing in a
love Tom
Christmas
Hey,
movie?
Cavanaugh.
hey, look, it's keeping
I do too.
that channel between that and Lifetime. It's keeping Dean Cain working. I think that's all that matters.
I am deeply upset we didn't get a Dean Cain Superman cameo.
I was annoyed about that as well.
Yeah, I was wondering. Something happened where he wasn't available. What? I think he
No, I mean that might have been part
He
of
was
it.
doing a
but
Hallmark film.
I think they did not go out of their way for Dean Cain because of
He-
some of his.
he's a lightning
political
rod
views.
because his his politics. Yeah,
Have you seen his Twitter?
yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for.
Woo.
He and Kevin Sorbo are going to get together and combine their DNA and create a super creepy monster. Is what's going to
Oh,
happen.
don't forget what's his name?
The guy
Played
that
Jane in
played-
in Firefly.
Oh, yeah, him too.
Oh, really?
Oh, God, yeah.
Adam
Oh,
Baldwin,
can we
really?
get
Adam Baldwin.
Adam Baldwin?
No.
Can we get James Woods in that too?
Yeah, and
How
James
about,
Woods.
how about Garibaldi from Babylon 5?
Him too?
He's a talk show radio.
Not-
He's a radio talk show host.
And
Anymore.
let's not
Oh, he
forget.
canned him?
Okay.
They
Let's
canned
not
him?
forget our favorite
No,
Star
he's
Trek
dead.
captain.
He died
Oh.
He died several years ago.
Oh, I didn't even know.
He lived right behind me.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah,
William
your body.
Shatner.
Oh.
Jerry Doyle. Jerry Doyle.
Oh, and the Twitter's
Michael
latest
Garibaldi.
pariah. Twitter's latest pariah, J.K. Rowling.
Oh, God. What was she
Yeah,
thinking?
but she has a history of doing good work for people. She actually went down from a billionaire status to a multi-millionaire status because of the amount of money she gave away.
Yes, unfortunately, her views on transgender people are.
Yeah, they're atrocious. But I'm just saying, there's. Remember how we were saying about getting ahead of the story? This is her story. Her story is that she doesn't understand because she's a certain age. All right, and
She's younger than me. P.S.
Well, that
Oh.
doesn't say much.
I'm rather, that's,
Oh,
that's half the West Coast. Come on.
Yeah.
Just half.
Oh, you people are cruel and
And-
unimaginable.
Cruel and unusual.
And in my late neighbor Jerry Doyle's defense, and I'm not kidding, he lived in development right behind me from where we're sitting. Jerry was a libertarian. He was not a right wing lunatic, and he was very much critical of both sides of the spectrum.
So basically, we're going to get all of these people together and create one massive Absorbaloff.
Another guy that is very vocal is the guy that plays the Flash's dad on the Flash. He played the original Flash. What was his name?
Oh, yeah, he played Jay Garrick eventually too.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name.
Himself from his original show.
Yeah.
Yes, and himself from the original show.
Yeah, he's also very vocal. That and so is Gil Jarrow.
John Wesley Shipp.
Yeah, there we
Yes,
go.
that's
Yeah,
his. That's
he's
his
very
name.
vocal. So is Gil Jarrow.
Yeah,
Bill
you know,
Gerard.
the thing that, like, take Adam Baldwin for example. I like his work. I liked him. I mean, since I first saw him in My Bodyguard in like 1980, which was a great film, by the way, if you haven't seen it. And I thought he was great in Firefly. I thought he was great in what's that show on TNT, which basically is, you know, Star Trek on the ocean.
Sequest.
No. It's it just concluded its run. Shoot, it's about a battleship that survives
the last ship.
pandemic.
The last ship.
That last ship. I think he's, you know, his character there is great. So, you know, I don't have a problem with people who have different political views than I do having roles in movies, and I can enjoy them in those movies. There's lines that get crossed, and I've actually argued with Adam Baldwin several times on Twitter. And I don't think he crosses that line, you know, as many of the things he says that I completely and utterly disagree with, some of which are offensive, but he doesn't cross the line. J.K. Rowling crossed a line this week with what she said, you know, and partly because it was so at odds with the rest of her character. Like Adam Baldwin is consistent with his character. He's consistent with his portrayals. He's, you know, so it's not a surprise. You know what you're getting. But when someone who you respect for being very progressive, very forward thinking in so many ways, to hold these views and just go out of her way to promulgate them and then defend them, you know, after being called out about it, that's part of what makes that crosses the line for me.
Fair enough. I mean, Adam Baldwin, he describes himself as a small government conservative libertarian, is what he describes himself as. But I agree with you. I mean, it's very disappointing. Our heroes let us down, as it were. But it's very disappointing when, you know, you come to expect, based on past behavior, you know, in past, you know, positions on things, to them to 180 on such a, and be so vocal. That's the other thing about it too. You know, a lot of times it's like, just keep it to yourself, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, it's consider the effect that your words have on people. My God. So.
Yeah, I mean, she has a big platform. So when
she
says things like that, people listen and people are reacting as they should.
It's like when certain somebody that runs the country decided to say something very negative a couple days ago about the certain situation there. All his followers took it to heart.
Yeah, you have influence. Exactly. You know, that's you know, this is really what it comes down to with Trump. If you want to say one thing about him, the guy knows
his name.
he knows how to play his audience. That's for damn sure. You know, but and they you know, when you're in this kind of position of public status, your words do matter. Period.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so let's move to our next topic, which is. Interestingly, we started with HBO. We're going to stick with HBO for a second, as we learned this week that those of you who use HBO Go as your online way to stream your HBO, that is going away shortly with the arrival of HBO Max and the reality that there's so many different brands of HBO apps and ways to access the content that are out there, that it was really confusing people. The branding confusion was pretty bad, and so with the agreement last week with Comcast finally bringing, you know, most of the cable companies under the wing of HBO Max, so that if you subscribe to HBO, you don't have to pay extra to get HBO Max. That HBO Go becomes sort of superfluous, and so they're getting rid of it in favor of of people accessing all of that content via HBO Max. HBO Now, I think, is also going away, because if you have an HBO Now account, which is how you access HBO, just paying, for just that service, streaming service, you're going to be shifted over automatically to HBO Max. So, so the branding around HBO is still an issue here. And interestingly, I know I asked everyone a couple of weeks ago around the time that HBO Max premiered whether you were going to check it out. How many people have, even at a trial basis?
Well, I have to. I don't have really much of a choice here, because I'm a subscriber to HBO. So while they're just announcing this transition, I've already made the transition. I'm already using HBO Max. So it's no skin off my teeth either way. It's just same platform with a different name. It's really all it is to me. So
I guess it's worth saying. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I guess it's worth saying that I had HBO briefly when Chernobyl was still debuting. I got it to watch Chernobyl, and after it ended, I canceled the subscription. The app never left my iPad, however, and very recently it auto updated to HBO Max. So
interesting. Okay,
See, I don't have auto updates on my iPhone.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is basically like I got HBO Now in the run up to the launch of HBO Max, and the day it was released, my HBO Now app just became HBO Max on my iPhone, on my iPad, and on my Apple TV. So this isn't like new. This is, it's odd that it's breaking the news now, but this is, I think, seems like it's always, that was always the.
Well, that's true for HBO Now, but HBO Go, because I have HBO Go on all of my devices, and I manually downloaded HBO Max, and my HBO Go, as of yesterday, was still there. So, so there's that. It's completely going away, though, at some point. Now, but interestingly, with the streaming wars that are going on, HBO Max has made some interesting choices about how they're going to handle their market share, because they are not available on either through Amazon or through Roku. And between those two services, they have 70% of the market share in the US, which means that HBO Max is missing out on a lot of money, which is an interesting financial choice. What's that, Justin?
I thought it was available on Roku.
Nope, it's not.
No, the platforms for this are very limited, all things considering. It's so.
So we'll see how that goes. AT&T, by the way, is also making a bid, trying to sweeten the pot to get people to sign up for HBO Max by not charging its internet customers, removing data caps with regard to their use of HBO Max, which kind of undermines their competition, because of course they, customers still have to worry about their bandwidth caps through their ISPs when watching Netflix or Prime or any of the others. So it's an interesting position that, well, under this administration, I don't think you're going to see any kind of antitrust issues coming up because of this, but it's still something that, I guess they're going to get away with it with regards to the bandwidth, but the loss of market share, I think, is going to end up possibly biting them in the butt unless they're able to turn that around with Amazon. And
I think eventually they will resolve whatever disputes they have with those two companies and get those at Fire TV Stick and Roku. I don't think that's.
Yeah,
I think it's going to. They're not going to have much of a choice, because I think by eliminating HBO Go, that just hurts Fire TV Stick users or Fire TV users and Roku users, because HBO Go is of course available on those platforms.
Right.
So and this happened. This is not the first time this has happened with a big platform like this, or a big content provider like the streaming service, getting off of another platform. This happened with YouTube with Fire TV Stick. I think it lasted I think it lasted about 6 months before Amazon customers lost their fucking minds, and they finally, Amazon worked it out with YouTube to get the app back on there, because they were still able to access it, but it was how they had to access it. They had to go
do it through their weird web browser, which was
or Firefox, exactly. And the app was so much more convenient, of course. And so I think it's really a matter of the platforms listening to their customers and saying that, and just bowing to demand of that. That's going to force the sides to come together. It's like any carrier dispute, really, when it comes down to, with the cable companies and the cable networks and things like that. So
you think they'll eventually resolve the disputes and
I do.
HBO Max?
Just when I look at carrier disputes, and just based on what happened with YouTube and Amazon, I think that it's going to resolve itself in due time. It's not going to be too long that people are going to be without it. Especially, like I said, now I think that's probably the big deal about announcing the elimination of HBO Go. They're forcing the hand. They're forcing this issue now.
Yeah. It's definitely a tactical maneuver for sure. Go ahead, Justin.
Jason, your damn background is hypnotic.
I told you.
I know. I can't stop watching. I can't stop watching.
Looking at that damn background throughout the whole show, and we're like, "Oh, look, it's about to hit the corner."
I have kept track of the number of times it's hit the corner square.
Poor
It's
Travis.
up to 5. Yeah.
He must feel so ignored because his fidget spinner isn't the center of attention.
Sorry, Travis. You're
he's at the end. He's at the bottom of the page, so we're
when
just
this thing comes
ignoring
up, I'm not worried about it.
Okay.
This thing is here to calm my nerves, not to entertain you.
Well,
You said in a rather jealous, fighting tone.
Yeah, now I'm kind of disappointed, because that's what I thought I was there for.
Yeah.
So, damn it.
There for Sean's.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go to our next topic, which is one that we have been postponing for the last couple of weeks, but of course there's no more news hooks about this, and that is what is happening with theatrical releases of Hollywood movies from the major studios. And we learned this week that Disney has announced that another one of its major motion picture releases, the animated film, The One and Only Ivan, based on a series of kids' books, is not going to be making its original August 24th theatrical debut, and will instead be moving, I think, sometime earlier in August to Disney Plus, as a number of other things have. Artemis Fowl just dropped on Disney Plus today, I believe. I've watched the first 25 minutes. That little kid who plays Artemis Fowl is just the coolest little Irish kid I've ever seen. Anyway, apropos of nothing. But the bigger issue here, of course, is, what's going on with, what's the landscape going to look like for movie theaters when things open back up again? Because, of course, they need films to show. And if the films are all now going to, online venues, what does that mean? And then they're seeing these decisions being made by Hollywood studios right and left. Disney still has Mulan slated for a July 24th theatrical release. Anybody think that's going to happen?
Well,
Yes.
our movie theaters open next week here in Indiana, so
Are people going to go?
Our theater was open this weekend.
Hey, here's the thing: they've canceled every big public event, so
Our theater was open last weekend, and they were showing The Blind Side for $5 matinee stuff.
The Blind Side?
What?
Yeah.
From like a decade ago?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
What we've seen here is we've seen drive-ins open up.
Yep.
To a lot of success.
Yeah.
So calling back to the 50s, right? But one of the interesting things is The King of Staten Island is supposed to be released to, in theaters, and they've pulled it from drive-ins, and it's in favor for a VOD only release.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
it's
there's just not enough drive-ins. There's very
Well,
few of them left.
I think this is this is doable for certain types of movies, lower budget films. This is not going to work with tentpole movies. Didn't they say that the new Ghostbusters movie isn't coming out till next year now?
Yeah.
I mean, none of the big superhero movies have any expected release date planned now in them. You can do. I think
Wonder
you can
Woman
do.
got pushed back, I think, too.
Yeah, you can do this for. I think it's okay. It's economically feasible, financially feasible for them to do this with lower budget films and for animated films. That don't have nearly the kind of massive budgets and massive returns expected on them.
No, but I mean, but Trolls World Tour made over $100 million.
True.
Right, but Trolls World Tour, what did it cost to make? It wasn't it's not a
90 to 110 million.
90. That's what it cost to make Trolls.
That was the budget. Yeah, that was the budget.
And it made how much?
I think it was the number you quoted was its opening week. It's probably continuing to make money, but
its opening week VOD was 95 million,
which is decent.
For a movie that cost 110 million.
Well, you're assuming that that's all the money it's ever going to make. Of course, it's not.
No. Of course, no. That's not. You're missing my point entirely. That was the opening weekend. It made a lot more money than that. Is my point on this. I mean, they can afford to do that. You can't afford to do that for the next Avengers film, even though it's not an Avengers film. I know that. You get my point, though.
Yeah, no, that's the same point I made several weeks ago when we first started talking about this topic, which was exactly that. Tentpoles cost too much money for VOD alone to be able to produce the kind of revenue that they need to make their budget back, much less do a profit. So long term, it's not just movie theaters that may be significantly hurt by the new reality we live in. Movie studios themselves may not be able to afford to make huge tentpoles or as many of them because there's just not as many avenues for them to earn revenue.
Right. Movie profitability will no longer be based on the initial box office results. It's going to be based more on the long term play. I think they're going to have to consider what will licensing rights of this movie get us, or how many subscribers will this get us to our so we'll make an Avengers movie, for $100 million. We will sell it on VOD. We may maybe hopefully break even on VOD, but the cash won't come in until we get them hooked on our streaming service with the content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changing the calculus around success. And some would argue, and I might be among them, that the obsession with opening weekend movie returns in an era where really very few people go to movies anymore, even before the coronavirus, was an unrealistic barometer of the success of a film. So long term, that you may be absolutely right, Jason, that the calculus may be broadened more to subscriptions for streaming services like Disney Plus or Netflix and so forth, which they spend tons of money creating content, but if they can lock in subscribers over long term, that's a continuous and reliable revenue stream that evens out the what you see economically from motion pictures that are released theatrically, where the investments as often as not, and sometimes not more than often, are financial disasters. So
I mean, the other thing that has to be considered is, are theaters going to survive this year? We already have AMC saying they're most likely going to have to file bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. And it's very likely we're going to see a significant reduction in the number of screens in this country, which will drive up the cost of watching a movie in the theater. And so, I mean, it was a few years ago, I think, that where both Spielberg and Lucas said that there will come a point where it's going to be going to the theater. You're going to spend $100 a ticket, and I see that. I didn't believe it at the time. I'm like, no, they're nuts, they're crazy. But I think that the reality is that we're going to see significantly constrained supply of theaters which is going to drive that reality.
I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see an uptick in drive-in theaters start to service because of with everything going on. People
Already
are-
have.
Well, I mean, with them resurfacing. I mean,
In general, like a new.
Yeah,
Well,
like,
are you talking?
new,
Are you talking about new drive-in theaters?
yes, new ones, new construction of drive-in theaters.
It will be interesting to see because they're very land intensive and land is expensive. That's why so many former drive-in theaters have now become shopping centers.
Real estate, son.
because-
Real estate.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
Those shopping centers have rather large parking lots. They could probably easily convert something like that to
now
a
that's
drive-in.
an entrepreneur talking there, Roz.
Or are you
Well, see,
tearing it-
here's
you
the
tear
here's
down-
the other
Sounds
thing.
like new theaters are going to be opening up to replace the old
So
ones.
here's
Especially
the
ones with
interesting thing.
IMAX theaters with huge walls that are just sitting there doing nothing.
The interesting thing is that you're seeing a lot of shopping centers and strip malls have to dissolve because
Right.
they
That's the same
too
thing.
they too have not seen many shoppers in a long time. So
Mhm.
there's the land back again for the drive-in
Yeah,
theater.
it's cyclical, and I was going to point this out too. That Carlos, what you and Jason were talking about this change of the business operations for feature films, in starting to target new releases for streaming. Let's not forget that Netflix started this whole trend of wanting. That was their goal, was to get. It started a few years ago with them trying to. They're producing these major, what would have been theater releases any other time until now, and they're now going directly to Netflix. I mean, look at all the, Academy Award nominations that Netflix has received over the past few years, and
And A-list actors
I
like
mean, the
Will
art-
Smith and Bright.
right, and of course The Irishman just over
Yes.
But
the last
interestingly,
holidays.
in order to become eligible for those Academy Awards, those movies had to be
You have to have
screened
theatrical
in theaters.
releases. Right. I
so-
think that's going to change. I think
Yeah.
I think the industry is going to change that.
And
Right.
that's kind of interesting because the Oscars are a cultural touchstone, and Netflix is now competing on for awards from both the Oscars and the Emmys. And in
Right.
fact, most of its content is eligible only for the Emmys. So it'll be interesting to
But
see
aren't
how.
didn't they do for The Irishman? Didn't they have a limited theatrical run?
Yeah, that's how
Just
come it
qualified,
qualified
right?
for the Oscars. But that's the exception, not the rule. Most of their new content is dedicated to just streaming and therefore eligible only for the Emmys.
And as I've said before on this topic, I think that's what the future of theaters is going to be. There probably still is going to be theatrical releases. Either we're going to see simultaneous release theatrical and digital, or we'll see more of a on-demand special event kind of theatrical release, because people still want that experience. People still want to have that shared group experience for entertainment. That's why sports are so popular. That's why any kind of concert is popular. It's that shared experience that you don't get in the digital space.
I don't know.
I
They're
would
sure
say-
not doing any of the concerts or any of the big get-togethers right now.
I would say that
Well,
theaters'
that's
best
being
bet is to
COVID.
create a luxury experience and market it that way.
Right. And that actually, I don't know if I talked about this a few weeks ago. There is a national chain called Eclipse, and I think it doesn't Alamo Draft House.
It's an indie film.
Eclipse, Alamo Drafthouse.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I've gone to Eclipse quite a few times. Eclipse is great. Eclipse, you go in there and they sit you down. You're with your luxury leather seats that have flip down tables. You got a waiter that comes to you, brings you your food, and like you've got a full menu available to you. Shit like that. I love that experience. It's great. It's expensive as hell, but when we find a Groupon, fuck it, I'm on that shit. I will tell you that much every time.
There's a chain here in Iowa called Flix that does about the same thing.
Yeah, we got ours
Yeah.
that does that here.
The Studio Movie Grill.
Yeah, it's a great idea, and it had its genesis before COVID-19. And I agree with Raul that I think we're going to see more of that experience. I think the industry is been, from what I've seen, for, let's even go back 50 years, has been kind of a one-trick pony on this. The biggest change came in the 80s with home video. And that was really all that really happened. We're seeing the biggest changes now happen so rapidly. That's just everything from the technology to being forced into it through the pandemic, that it's causing the industry to reassess all the avenues of revenue for the product. And I think that's good. I think it's ultimately good for the consumer. It gives them, many different options to consume the media.
To be fair, the streaming services were painting a picture on the wall for the your basic movie going experience. It was going to go the way of the dodo, and it's going to further as we go on, regardless of whether the COVID gets solved tomorrow or never.
Exactly.
It's just that technology disrupts economic systems. That's the first thing you learn in economics.
Yeah, this is what COVID has done is simply kickstart this into high gear is what it's done. But you're absolutely correct. I totally agree with you on that.
Well, I mean, we've seen advertising like this. I mean, even before the introduction of the Red Box, where they were talking about simultaneous release in theaters and on streaming stuff, and then we got the Red Box, and it was like, and simultaneous release at Red Box too, and it's like, yeah,
Right, but the
Something the
theaters,
theaters fought tooth and nail over.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly it. And that's the biggest problem here is you have opposing agendas on this.
right.
And
But the theaters are gonna like AMC, like they already drew their line in the sand against Universal. But that if they were open tomorrow, they would play it. I mean, because of where they're at, like they've got to get their butts in seats, because every day that those seats go vacant is money they have. It's lost money. It's lost revenue.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
That's why my theater was playing The Blind Side for $5 on every showing.
That's why a theater, the Boone Community Theater, is selling popcorn out the front door every Sunday.
It's brilliant. That's fucking brilliant.
Yeah,
I
I'm
love
talking
that.
about really big bags of popcorn.
I figured they weren't selling it by the 12.
That is an option, but
That's
it's
a large.
primarily the big bags.
Right. Yeah.
We need to get you a windsock there, Sean.
I know. You're not kidding. Is it? By the way, real quick question: Is the wind really bad? Can you hear the wind?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
we can
No,
hear
I'm
the
gonna-
wind.
I'm gonna move then. I'm gonna.
I do have a more serious question. Did you break anything, Jason?
Did I break anything?
Yeah, I heard your chair go crack and your eyes go wide.
No, it lost the lock and I flew back.
Well, I hope
Well,
you're
you
okay.
recovered with grace and style, Jason.
I
Tried.
thought maybe you broke your lightsaber or something.
No.
Okay, those eyes. You're like, oh God, oh God, oh God.
We did see the cat though.
Yeah.
He made an appearance.
Meow, meow.
I had a cat on my lap earlier.
Yeah, one in my chair again. All right, moving on.
Now that we've had.
Yeah, a couple of interesting things because of the coronavirus. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences actually has waived the theatrical exhibition rule this year for films eligibility for an Oscar, which is an interesting development. So who knows? Things are changing. There's actually a really excellent article in the New York Times from a couple of weeks ago called "Movie Theaters Are on the Brink. Can Wine and Cheese Save Them?" Basically saying, what you guys were talking about, by making it a more luxury experience, is that a way to save motion pictures? We'll see.
I mean, even with a drive-in experience, if you have people serving food and stuff to their cars like they would at roadside diners where people would pull up and get served on people at roller skates. I mean, if you implement that, or like Sonics, if anyone's ever been to a Sonic, something like that with a theater premise. I mean,
I've been to a Sonics with really bad kids on the skates, and it was hilarious. The best time of my life. These poor kids never knew what hit them.
Until they crashed into your car and like all that change spread down.
I got out of my car, sir. I saw that. I saw that thing early. I got out of my car.
Well, yeah, I mean,
All right.
we'll see something like that coming around with movie theaters and going in. If we go back to the drive-in where they're more popular, I mean,
I just don't think you're going to see many drive-ins. I mean,
oh, you didn't
Look,
never
if
you
we-
would see drive-in churches. And
If we get the return of the drive-in, I'm just so excited
Yeah.
for the new drive-in intermission animations.
those were pretty good. I mean, I loved going to drive-ins as a kid.
I think it's going to depend on what happens with the new normal, right? So,
Yeah.
if we're going to be in this constant state of flux of open, shut down, I mean, I think people are going to look for things to be able to do. I mean, although I totally understand the complete injustices that drove the protests, a lot of that rage early on, I think, is directly attributable to people who have lost hope because they've lost their jobs. They've been at home for 3 months. They don't know what to do, and there's a lot of frustration there. So, I mean, I think that that realistically closing everything down, expecting everybody to stay at home is unrealistic. And so I think if this does kind of continue in kind of this wavy up down for the next 18 months, 24 months, you're going to see drive-ins open because it's an easy way to give people a way to blow off steam, yet still really safely social distance by keeping them in their cars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all.
No, let's not go to the lobby.
There is no
Lobby's
lobby.
where COVID is.
Yeah.
No, don't
push
say
the button. Let's
Can't
push
stay
the
in the
button.
country that long.
Push the button.
All right. Well, let's move next to our topic, which is our only real Star Trek topic this week, which is interesting. We had Jonathan Frakes, of course, portrayed Will Riker on Next Generation, who now is regular director of episodes on Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. He was interviewed this week on the podcast of our good friends at Trek Geeks in a charity event, live stream event to raise money for food for people who are having food issues around the lockdowns. And as part of his interview on that show, he talked about a number of things. One was his hope that we'll see more Will Riker in season 2 of Picard.
Michael Dorn could not be reached for comment on whether or not
Poor
he was
Michael
casted.
Dorn.
Not by his choice. Not by his choice. Poor man. Poor man.
He
Every time you turn around,
He's
he's
too
like,
desperate.
"Bring back Worf."
Worf is that ex-boyfriend. He's that guy.
he's no poor Michael Dorn.
I don't care as long as we get John Delancey as Q in season 2.
No.
Yes.
No.
Actually, John
Yes.
Delancey doesn't like Star Trek as much as we think he does.
Junior.
Yep, it's all about the bronies now.
We'll get Junior.
Yeah, no,
He's a big
Nope.
brony star now. His
Uh,
mom that
his
caught him
character-
for a different reason.
that
Funny
is so
enough,
terrifying
his
on
character
so
in My
many
Little
different
Pony
levels.
is the exact same
Oh,
as Q in Next Gen.
Oh my god. Oh my
We'll,
god.
we'll get Junior just to aggravate Carlos.
Yeah, it will aggravate me too. I'm not going to say I'll eat my hat if we see Q in season 2 of Star Trek Picard, but I'll eat something.
Come on,
Oh,
though.
Lord.
Cilantro.
Carlos, just think about it though. Like all the antagonism between Q and Picard when Picard was mortal. Now Picard is. I mean, he's
Mortal Plus.
Mortal
Mortal
plus.
Plus.
Like
He's
like,
mortal
imagine,
upgraded.
like imagine that like conflict or that dialogue, Mon Capitan. It would just be like, I don't
He's
know.
not trying to seduce him.
Well, I don't, I didn't dislike Q episodes in Next Generation. Didn't dislike the one on DS9. In fact, I think it's
I
the
hated
best Q
Voyager.
episode was the one on DS9, and I thought the Voyager ones were fine. So it's not that I don't like Q. I just don't think Q is appropriate for the kind of show Picard is
I
today.
agree.
That's my only issue. It muddies the value proposition of the
If
kind
they
of show that
bring
Picard is
him,
trying to
if
be.
they bring him in as a character, right, not as the Loki that he's been, would you change your mind? Like yes, he's still Q, but it wasn't on the show wasn't a focus on what Q is doing with his powers, but rather it being a show or an episode or a story about the interaction between Picard and his frenemy.
I think you could make that into an interesting episode.
Yeah.
What I don't think you can do is have effectively it's not a Q episode. I mean, you have the two personalities, clashing, and that's fine. But when people talk about Q, they're talking about the over the top dramatics and the blah blah blah. That's just, I mean, it's mariachi bands on the bridge of the Enterprise. Come on.
But that's
awesome.
Elon Musk. That's Elon Musk, sir.
Wait
Yeah,
wait
and
a
I don't
minute,
feel
wait a
too
minute.
great about him
I
right now.
figured
either.
out how you could do that in season 2.
Lay it on me, son.
He's in a brand new body, and that body is glitching. So he's literally seeing Q all the fucking time.
Seriously, I will vomit if that happens.
Carlos, what about the Q from Tapestry?
Okay, so Tapestry, again, one of my favorite episodes
It's a Wonderful Life of
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
But how appropriate would that be with Q forcing Picard to kind of reflect on the nature of his life?
Sure. I mean, you could probably get away with something like that. But the thing about Tapestry is it's only nominally a Q episode. I mean, Q is what sets it in motion, but what makes it a powerful episode is really just Patrick Stewart and exploring his character as Picard, and that's what makes it fascinating viewing.
And
so,
that's I think that's how we if Q shows up, that's how we should get him.
If you can find a way
where Q forces Picard to reflect on something in the nature of his new existence.
Sure.
That is the exploration that awaits you, Jean-Luc. Not charting anomaly or cataloging nebula, but the uncharted possibility.
How about this?
Honestly, I think it's what Jason alluded to, that it's about how they present the episode. It's not as much the content. It could be almost anything and still be really, really good.
Well, and what's interesting to me, though, as you point out, and I could be persuaded that a show built along the lines of Tapestry could be a good episode, but I don't. The emotional response I have to suggestions that we have Q on Picard, they're not looking for that version of Q. They're looking for the more typical, Loki version of Q, and that's what I'm opposed to. So I don't think it's impossible to come up with a way to have Q in an episode of Picard and for it to still be dramatically appropriate.
So no Robin Hood
this
show.
time.
I
protest. I am not a merry man.
I think the only way that you can make Q work on this, considering the serialized nature of the show, and that is if we go with the premises at the end of however many seasons there are, 3, 4, 5, whatever, that Picard dies, and you get Q at the end, at the very end, as he's dying, and it bookends his entire journey on Star Trek. That's how I think you do it.
Q reaches out his hand to Picard. Are you ready to go on another journey?
Yeah,
Picard
something
reaches
like,
out. You don't see them touch, but that's when the screen goes blank.
Right, something like that.
Oh, that would be horrible.
So
That'd be horrible. Here's why.
Sopranosing the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, which, by the way, did you hear about the Sopranos thing? The what's his name? The creator of Sopranos was being interviewed on The Decider, I think, and he let slip that that episode really Tony was meant to die after that, after what you see in the episode. He accidentally referred to that last scene as the death scene.
By the way,
and when they called him out on it, he was like, "Shut up, you fuckers," and laughed it off. But
what's going to happen at the end of Picard, whenever it's all said and done, it's going to be something like this.
Mon capitaine!
You know how I feel about that, Justin.
Okay with it.
Hard fucking
And now
pass.
we've been demonetized on YouTube. Thanks, YouTube. And we have a copyright claim from CBS. Nice.
And muted
Thanks,
on
Joe.
Twitch.
Are we supposed to be talking about Riker right now?
Well, we're
Yeah,
talking about.
derailed.
What did I miss?
Look,
I missed the whole
Riker.
Riker.
We're talking about
Riker
Picard.
literally said he's looking forward to being Riker more. There's only one place he could do that. It's
Right,
on
Picard.
Picard.
Grand openings of malls and Best Buys. I don't know.
So do we want Captain Riker or Captain Riker to return, or do we want Chef Bunny Cord Pizza Chef?
Oh,
I
we
want-
know what you want.
I want more Daddy Riker.
I love Daddy
Yeah.
Riker. Be my
like-
Daddy Riker.
I like the
I mean, I like
way.
pizza.
Can we have more?
To Super Geeks at.
Can we have more actual therapist Troy, please?
Yes,
There you go.
Oh my God! Yes.
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 She was finally a
That was
therapist.
well. We know how Sean feels about that because he has very strong opinions about Counselor Troy.
But she was actually a therapist on
But she was-
Picard.
She was a great therapist on Picard.
She was brilliant. She did more in her episode there than she had an entire 7 seasons of in what, 3.
Wait.
She got-
She got Barkley. She got broccoli in kind of into at least a functioning holodeictionist person.
Barkley was a
Yeah-ish.
damn stalker in those appearances, just showing up unannounced on her damn vacation.
If it wasn't for Troy's psychiatric help with broccoli, Voyager never would have gotten
Stop calling
home.
him.
Broccoli.
It's Freudian. at
That
You're
is-
right.
That
So
is
she basically
offensive,
saved
sir.
Voyager.
You are hashtag canceled. Broccoli.
I challenge you to watch those episodes. Barkley figured it out by himself with no help.
No,
from
he
her.
didn't.
No, fuck that. She was useless.
We are canceling Jason Cormack. No, I'm kidding.
It was especially nice to see Troy put Picard in his place.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
great. Actually, that was one of my favorite.
Fine.
parts
It
of
was
the episode.
nice to have writers who actually wrote a therapist well.
Yes.
Which is funny because everyone in Hollywood goes to a therapist. So even back when TNG was on, they should have known better.
Do you know what was great about that episode? I mean, I think it's probably one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek at this point. Is that up until this point, we've just seen people like not receive Picard well, right? And
Mhm.
like it for various reasons, and some of them good, some of them are what they are. But we get to this point to where he goes to this planet and he reconnects with basically his family, and they accept him, and they love him. And they shower him with that warmth and affection. At the same time, they are willing to say, "Wait, you're out of line here, and this is what you need to do." And it was both Troy and Riker.
Yeah.
It was just great to
Yes,
see that.
agreed.
All
So
I
by way of
felt-
concluding this talk, wait, who was saying something?
No. I was just going to make a bad joke. Continue.
Oh, okay.
Or
Anyway,
those
I was
can
just going
wait.
to wind down the topic by saying that that I would not be opposed to a Q in the final episode, but for him to honor Picard actually dying, like he's
Yeah, that's
gone.
what I mean.
Yeah, not a you're on a new journey, blah blah blah, but just
Well,
like
okay.
you're dead,
Personally,
Picard.
They were refraining
And-
from killing off Picard because we've already seen Picard die in this series. If they go for twice, it might be a little overkill.
Well,
You're
no,
dead, Picard, and I'm God.
We've seen Picard die twice now?
More than that.
That was the
3
best part of.
times,
That's
yeah.
the best part of Tapestry is when Picard wakes up in the afterlife to Q.
Yeah, in the white void, as
Yep.
John
Yeah.
Oliver calls it.
And you're dead.
Indeed. All right, so let's move on to a happier topic, and I'm being sarcastic there, which is the news this week that whoa, I hit the wrong button there. The news this week that Hannibal, one of my favorite episodes, or one of my favorite series, which of course was created and produced by Star Trek alumnus Brian Fuller, is hitting Netflix this month,
Yeah.
and
It's already there.
leading to speculation that with the broad reach the show is likely to get on Netflix, that it might see some sort of renaissance, which both both the stars and the producers have said they'd be open to if someone pays them to actually make it. I don't know how many of you all were fans of Hannibal. I was a huge fan of it, of the show, but if you haven't watched it, this is your chance, and you can see the stunning. It's one of the best television series ever made, in my opinion. It's edgy, but you really see Brian Fuller's genius on display in this show.
It's a show about a cannibal serial killer. Of course, it's going to be edgy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
but not in the way you think. You know,
this is if you haven't seen it before, Hannibal is. I continually surprised that this ever made it to NBC because of how almost David Lynchian it is. It is really quite the adventure, to say the least. I also point out that it's also available on Amazon Prime. It's been there for a long time. If people realize this, all 3 seasons. It's significant to me that Netflix has now also picked it up as well, because the question is, what are they going to do with it? Do they want to do something with this property? Do we know? Are there any indications of that whatsoever?
There are no indications.
There's precedent. Look at what they did with Lucifer.
Sure.
And
they're
that's
going to wait and see. They're going to wait and see what kind of viewership it gets, and it could happen. It wouldn't surprise me these days if it were, and I would be very much in favor of it. In answer to the question about NBC, it was purely economics. Hannibal, which I think aired on Friday nights, not a great night for ratings to begin with, but Hannibal never had great ratings, but because of the co-production agreements that NBC had with networks in Europe that also funded its production, it didn't have to get great ratings to be able to turn a profit with the kinds of ratings and advertising it was able to get in the time slot that it was on American television. So by having it's very similar to what you're seeing with Star Trek Discovery, because so much of its production costs were paid for by the licensing fees that Netflix paid for it internationally. It made it come to profit much more quickly than it would have if CBS had borne the brunt of that all on its own. So that was why it was able to last the 3 seasons that it did before finally and sadly coming to an end.
Oh my God, that is. Holy shit. Matt Mikkelsen's a baby face.
He's brilliant. I think he's the best Hannibal we've ever seen on screen, frankly.
Ever, without question.
And that's
he's so perfect.
He had a high bar to
Anthony Hopkins, yeah, he had a really high bar. Yes.
Yeah.
And he did.
Oh.
So anyway, how many of you have ever seen Hannibal? I know you did, Sean.
I have not.
What else? Check it out. Seriously, it is
honestly.
You know
what?
Lush, just visually lush.
Is it presented in a way that American Psycho was presented in?
American Psycho was in many ways a very cynical representation, and was not nearly as visually stylish as what you see in Hannibal.
Okay.
And you've got to, and the thing about Hannibal too is that Hannibal isn't just an exploration of Lecter's mind. It's an exploration of the protagonist's mind as well. And this is why it gets so incredibly delicious all the way through. Will Graham, that's the name of the lead. That's been so long since I've seen Hannibal. I actually stopped watching after the 2nd season, but not through any fault of my own. What basically happened is that it was something my dad and I watched, and timing never got right for us to sit back down and watch it again. So I still need to watch season 3, but seasons 1 and 2 were just outstanding. So.
Right.
The article that I've linked to in the Trello card about this from The Ringer has a really interesting quote describing why Hannibal was able to pull off what it did without becoming sort of this like sordid, sensationalistic story of one repeat murder and after another.
Right.
So what they said was the show turned out to be a Trojan horse, or rather, to quote one of its most famous lines, a social worker sewn inside of a horse. From 2013 to 2015, Hannibal told a humanist story about a sociopathic cannibal using the structure of a network procedural to counter its worst impulses. No wonder it didn't last very long. But now that it's available to stream on Netflix, maybe the show will finally reach the audience it deserves. So we'll see if it does. And if any of you do end up watching it, let me know. We can do a little, review or whatever on the show in the future. So I would love to hear if any of you watch it and are similarly hooked as Sean and I were. Okay, now we're going into our gaming section of the show, and we're picking up on a story. Did this one come from you, son, or from Ross on loot boxes?
Oh, I actually added that.
Oh, that was Travis. Wow. Okay. Yes, there you are, Travis. So the UK apparently is on the verge of calling the practice of loot boxes, in gaming as a form of gambling, and therefore outlawing it, at least from games to which children are exposed. So how big a deal is this, and do you think it's going to happen?
This is actually a very big deal right now. As we've seen before, we've seen other countries approach loot boxes and declare them as gambling, and telling companies like EA, like, remove them from the games or your games are going to be rated adult only, and that will bring about a whole bunch of other complications in and of themselves. So they've very much complied with these companies and removed them. The thing is, these companies are kind of on the smaller end of the markets, and they don't really affect their profits. They still have a huge market in places like the United States or the United Kingdom, particularly in the United Kingdom with franchises like FIFA, the popular sports games. A lot of the sports games practice a lot of these loot box mechanics. I'm not a big fan of them myself. I play some baseball, but the loot box thing is just, it's very egregious. And right now, the United Kingdom is very much in this position where it's like, give us more evidence, because they're not exactly amused by the approach that EA has tried to dance around the issue. They've tried, rebranding loot boxes as surprise mechanics, comparing them to like chocolate surprise eggs and stuff like that. True story. That's what they did.
Kinder surprise eggs? They compared it to Kinder surprise eggs.
Yeah.
Anything to make a pound.
Well, EA is one of the worst offenders in the American market, at least. And mobile games, it's been their primary source of revenue. As much as people complain about loot boxes, they have been the cash cow for gaming, for revenue earning in gaming. And almost anything out on the market has it in one form or another.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. Even mobile games. My wife is playing that stupid Fishdom game.
Especially mobile games.
Oh my God!
Mobile games are number one offender.
I had to cut her off of Fishdom.
It's the easiest way to get people addicted, which is the whole point of gambling.
She's spending money on buying this stupid shit for this game. Like, how much have you spent so far? Okay, you spent $30. I've never spent $30 in my life on downloadable content. Are you kidding me?
Maybe not, but all she has to do is walk into your Star Trek collectibles room.
Yeah, but I have something tangible to show for it, though.
Hey! As a Homescapes player, which is the cousin of Fishdom, let me tell you that my house in Homescapes is very tangible to me.
Yeah, so is her fish tank. She was very impressed with the little fish playing the banjo that she's got there going on. We're all very proud of her and her little octopus. Yes.
Well, the writing has been on the wall for loot boxes for quite a while. One of the big turning points was EA's release of Battlefront 2, which was infamous in its use of gotcha mechanics and loot boxes.
Probably what started the whole thing.
In order to progress in the game, you had to put money into it to get the characters you need to move forward.
Yep.
And it got so bad that Disney had to come down on EA and tell them, change the game or we're yanking the Star Wars license.
Yep.
And every
And-
other license,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
big time. EA, I will say one thing that hasn't been mentioned. EA has been mentioned as the primary offender. There's a reason they're the primary offender. They are the world's biggest video game company. They are
No,
the
they aren't.
Microsoft. Yes, they are. For independent software, independent
They're
software.
the biggest American company.
Yes,
But
that's what I mean.
Tencent is a lot bigger.
Sure. And who's Tencent's partner?
Tencent they don't have a partner.
They do have a
People
partner.
partner with Tencent, but Tencent is a monolithic entity that has their fingers in everything.
Yeah, Tencent is a Chinese developer.
Incorporated in Panama.
It doesn't matter. If they're partially Chinese, they're owned by the Chinese government.
I know.
Okay.
But see, that's the other thing here. It's so weird that it was the Chinese government that was the first to act on all this loot box nonsense.
Oh, their restrictions are crazy for games.
I mean, it's weird, but at the same time, this is something that's been, like you said, Ross. This is
It's
something that's
because
been writing on the wall for a while. Mostly because games like Star Trek Online, who started introducing their own loot boxes and then ran wild with it because they were making money hand over fist.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're now hedging their bets by making single ships $175
Oh
to purchase.
God, I hate Star Trek Online for that.
It's a free-to-play game. They've got to make their money somehow, and they're going to appeal to the whales, the people who shell out the most money. You only need about 8% of your player base to actually pay in to your payable
Yeah, but
content
then
in
if you
order to
wanna
make a
play it-
profit.
And then if you want to play the game, you have to turn around and shell out all types of money.
No,
just
you
to be able
don't.
to
Not for
do
Star
it.
Trek Online.
Well, if you want to get the same ships that everybody else,
If
is
you want
fine.
those specific ships, yes, but that's not the discussion. The point is that loot boxes have been a huge issue for gaming for a very long time, and it's only through recent efforts by grassroots organizations finally appealing to their governments to take action that this is starting to change.
Are we going to see
Including
something like
ours.
this happen in the U.S.?
It is happening in the
already
US.
happening. It's already happening.
I mean,
Yeah,
on the part of
Hawaii,
the
for
government.
example, is
Yes.
on the verge of passing legislation that is banning loot boxes, and even the ESRB is finally taking action and rating games that have
You
loot
got a
box
source on
mechanics
that?
in their game as mature.
Because,
Oh wait,
can't even get poker games without it being rated mature because
I haven't seen the source on Ross's story about the ESRB making them mature, but I will say that one of the things that really hammers home the fact that the writing may be on the wall is that with as big an audience that the United Kingdom is regarding loot boxes and the franchises they're associated with, if they were to legally classify them as gambling and have them mandated, it would put a dent in EA's profit, and it would get to a point where EA would probably have to ask themselves, is it worth continuing this practice if it's going to be affecting our profits this much? I mean, sure, they'll probably find some other way to make money and we probably hate it just as much, but I mean, just like, it's just one of those, like, they're very much squeezing as much as they can out of it right now. And,
Of course.
Yeah, but they are looking at alternatives. Every
Here's
Yeah,
my
and-
question,
what if
though,
it's-
is the charge that it's exposing kids to gambling really the issue, or is it just that it's a bad? Yes?
Okay.
It's
so
not a
are-
canard that
there
they're just
are
using to get rid of a
It's-
practice they don't like.
There
it's
are
not-
plenty of horror stories on the internet right now, and like just any like Google search of a kid emptying their parents' bank account because they just cannot help themselves is easily findable. There are a lot
Those
of
parents deserve it.
oh,
See,
I'm
there's-
not gonna go there.
as
Listen,
much
listen.
as-
My kid did that once. One time, he went on his Switch in order to battle pass from Fortnite. One time, and I've removed my credit card, and he doesn't buy get anything on Fortnite anymore. If you entertain that kind of garbage, that's what they're going to do.
I mean, like, you got to understand that a lot of parents don't realize this until it is too late. And I understand they have to be more. It's a parent's job to watch what their kid does, but I mean, even I never really got crazy into loot boxes, but before loot boxes, I did do some mobile gaming, and I can understand that whole mentality of, it's only like $3, it's only $2. I play a lot of tap or whatever the hell it was called, and
it's not that there's this main contention over this whole think of the children thing again, which it's not. It is a system of gaming, whether it be mobile or in AAA titles, where you are being faced with a psychological choice of convenience. Let's make a mobile game just aggravating enough and say, hey, you can get past this level for $3.
Well, that's part of it.
When it comes to a AAA title, says, oh, hey, you want a really specific, you want to play Darth Vader? Okay, well, we have the Darth Vader box that you can get for $1.99 each.
Or like Cryptic doing this
getting them are 0.005% of the box.
Right.
Or what Cryptic is doing this weekend with their next weekend with the Romulan.
Well, there's more than just the children. There's more than just the children here. There's just the fact that people are spending real money for a chance at a very desired award. And while this isn't officially a method used by EA or whatnot, there are sites that people can exchange these rewards for real life money. And while EA and Activision or whoever can say that's not our fault, we don't condone this. I mean, it's like people using FedEx to smuggle drugs. I mean, FedEx can say hey, we're not responsible for the drug smuggling. It's it's your service. You got to mandate it. You got to be responsible for this.
They are the avenue in which illegal methods travel. That's what you're saying.
Counter-Strike gambling is what he's referring to, and that was a huge deal for a very long time that Steam turned a blind eye to for a while before.
Because it was making them money.
Well, the reality is that these lockbox items have a cash value, right? I mean, they do. There's some real world monetary value that people will pay. So the easy way around any gambling laws is say, oh, so you buy this, I think in Stowe it's you buy the key, right? You buy the lockbox key, right?
Yeah.
So you spend $10 on a lockbox key. What you're going to get is going to be worth $10 in game, and then you may have an opportunity to win something else.
The arguments against is similar to that, except it's the idea that what you're paying for is not something that is tangible. It has you're buying something that is only applicable to the game and has no resale value. And that's one of the things that worked against the Counter-Strike gambling thing, because people were trading it and were gambling with it on sites outside of Steam's influence.
Yeah, but I have Star Trek books that are very similar. They don't have any real value outside of it. I spend $10 for the ebook.
But you have ebook, okay.
Yeah. So I can't transition that. I can't sell that to anybody. It's
you can trade it.
It's also there's also the fact that a lot of these loot boxes very much replicate and visualize. I mean, not visualize. They simulate the visuals of your common slot machine in a casino, and they make it look exciting, and they give you all sorts of flashing lights and sounds, and they replicate very much what a slot machine does, and a lot of.
And then you've got the latest FIFA game, which has it was NBA, it was NFL 2K, one of those NBA. That has a literal slot machine in it.
Yes, and this is one of the funniest things about that. The ESRB rated this game E, despite the fact that there is a literal slot machine.
That accepts real world money.
Yeah, that
And,
tells you how
about
much effort the ESRB is putting into reviewing their games.
So this is-
Well, that they
And-
were. They're
hold on.
taking a stronger look at it now.
right.
And here's the funny thing. About 20 years ago, there was a game that was released here in the States that had virtual gambling. Virtual, like nothing real life about it. And this did get a higher rating, I believe, in the United Kingdom of Peggy 12, whereas FIFA is Peggy 3. And you know what this game was?
A gambling game?
No?
Poker?
Mario.
No. Pokemon Red. I shit you not. I kid you not. Pokemon Red got a Peggy 12 rating over FIFA, which you spend real money on for these chance rewards, which has a Peggy 3 rating. But because there's virtual gambling in Pokemon Red, which it has, it's just like.
I have a question for anybody that knows anything about Pokemon. Where are the adults?
They're around.
I ask myself that question all the time.
I'm just curious.
So my kid plays Pokemon, and I'm convinced that
They're in the world. It's not like Peanuts or anything.
I'm convinced Pokemon exists on one of those planets in Star Trek where all the parents have died because
Like Mary.
It feels like that.
There are adult characters all over Pokemon.
Yes, there are.
Like some of the trainers that you fight are adults.
Back when my kids were toddlers, I used to say it's the same thing about Max and Ruby. Where the hell are their parents? Never around. I guess nobody's ever seen Max and Ruby. Oh my god.
So I consider this a very simple argument that I bring up every time. So here's my argument for loot boxes. Do you consider the lottery gambling?
Yes,
of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then loot boxes are gambling because they're basically a lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like scratch off tickets.
They are a
but they're
digital
live.
lottery.
Yeah.
Well, except that you do get something out of each box, right? It's just the value may vary.
Well,
The in-game value may vary.
A lot of companies also restrict their trading value for real world money because they want to get around these laws. So it is what it is. I think this has bipartisan support in the Senate and the House. So this is going to be addressed very soon.
Here's hoping.
Hopefully.
The writing is on the wall.
If UK classifies it as gambling, it is only a matter of time before similar measures are taken here, I assume.
The sands of time are running out.
All right. Well, the writing's on the wall. Let's see what happens next. We'll go to our next gaming topic, and that is from Sun and Ross, talking about the remastered Command and Conquer and their first impressions of it. What do y'all have to say?
Okay, so context. Command and Conquer was my first game. My first the gateway to my to the world of gaming for me. I had played other things in the past, but this is one of my first obsessions, my first big fandom games.
Gateway drug.
Yes, thank you. So the Command and Conquer series was one of the seminal entries in the real-time strategy genre. Pretty much everything that has come back since has taken large portions of their mechanics from Command and Conquer. There were ones that came before, but this is the central link for pretty much everything. And the series itself was very beloved by myself and many fans, as like Sun, and unfortunately was not treated very well by EA, with subsequent entries being mostly positive until we get to things like CNC4, which was an upscaled mobile game with a pretty crap story. And after that, it was left to wallow for about a decade or so with no new entries, a bunch of smaller projects that were started, very, very low effort mobile games that never saw fruition, and of course the recent release of CNC Rivals, which was a fun mobile game, done very well, I think, but seen received not as well with the rest of the fans because it wasn't a mainline CNC game.
Well, here's the problem with Rivals is that we got like an 8-minute demo of the game, not knowing what it was, like for the first 3 minutes of them showing it off, because they literally had no marketing whatsoever for it. Just, hey, this is a thing now. It's like, what?
Hey, you guys want a Command and Conquer game? Here it is. By the way, it's mobile. So.
And everybody was like, really? You're gonna pull a do you not have phones on us?
Pretty much. So about 9 months later, a EA producer by the name of Jim Vasella came onto the CNC Reddit and announced that he was working on a remaster project. And this was met with cautious optimism, because EA has a reputation for kind of milking as much money as they can out of the franchise, and CNC being one of the most egregious examples of this. They're also quite infamous for closing down studios that prestige studios that aren't performing the way they want. Westwood Studios, the original creators of CNC. Other examples are Visceral Games, creators of Dead Space. And there's a huge list of studios.
There's a
long hit list.
There's
hit list.
Reason EA is nicknamed Unichronic Arts.
Yes. So, oddly enough, it seemed that Jim Vasella and EA were actually doing things right with this remaster. They created a community council, getting the biggest voices of the CNC community to contribute their thoughts and impressions to the development of this game. They licensed Petroglyph Studios, who is made up of Westwood Studios alumni after the studio was shuttered, and he was very open and transparent with the community about it during the development of this game. And it came out just a little over a week ago to nearly universal acclaim. They released a game that was very faithful to the original, with quality of life improvements that makes it feel more modeled, and beautifully recreated graphics with the ability to toggle between the original and the new art. And I've been playing it fairly constantly. Son has watched me stream. Travis, were you in on some of those streams? I forget.
I have not seen you stream Command and Conquer yet.
Okay. But it is wonderfully faithful to the original, to a fault, some might say. And it's just so bizarre that EA would do something so right, and Blizzard, on the other hand, with Warcraft 3 Reforged, botched nearly everything. It's a bizarre twist, reversal of roles, where Blizzard, once so beloved, is now largely reviled. And EA, which was reviled, has become something less negative,
less reviled, slightly less reviled.
This is a complete remaster as well. Mm-hmm. So even if you don't like the RTS genre, go ahead and spend $20 for 4 CDs worth of music.
Yes. One thing that really set Command and Conquer apart from others in the genre was its fantastic soundtrack. The audio director, Frank Klepacki, created this beautiful in 1995 created this beautiful synthesized soundtrack of industrial rock and roll tracks that really get your head banging. I've spent almost an entire stream just listening to this music and rocking out with people. It's so much fun.
And here's the big kicker: because of this remaster, he's been allowed to go back and make his original vision for those songs. So, like, there are some songs that are really quiet and ambianced and really chill, and now you have Whereas in '95 you had this very synthetic sound, even for it being chill. Now you hear the strings and the piano and all that kind of stuff for these tracks, and you're like, "Wow, this is so much more chill."
And
I would also like to say one thing about Command and Conquer series. It brought Hollywood-like production value to video game design.
the later entries did.
The later entries, like the Red Alerts, is what I'm thinking particularly.
Another hallmark of the CNC genre are its full motion video cutscenes. They are fun, they're campy, they're a little silly at times, but fit perfectly with the setting. With the original CNC and its sequel Red Alerts, which are part of this collection, they are largely minimalist, with a static camera and actors in front of it acting to the camera. And they've done their best with upscaling these videos into 4K using AI software. Some are better than others. The original footage was largely lost after Westwood's dissolution.
They spent months trying to hunt down the original footage.
Yes.
How does Tim Curry look in 4K?
It's not Tim Curry. He wasn't in
Tim
these.
Curry's 3.
Yeah.
This is the original Command and Conquer and the original Red Alert.
You're thinking of Red Alert 3.
Red Alert 2,
but he was
Red Alert
awesome.
3.
He was awesome in it.
He was awesome. I'm going to escape to the one place that hasn't been tainted by capitalism.
Space!
I have no idea what you're talking about, but that was brilliant.
Yes.
Well, Tim Curry, anything is brilliant.
Pretty much.
X's.
But and in an interesting twist, in the EA Plays presentation that's happening next week, there is a teaser that we might be getting more Command and Conquer. Whether it's going to be another remaster or a whole new entry, we don't know yet.
Yes, please.
But
Please,
if the quality is going to be what we saw from the remastered collection, I'm rooting for EA.
Well,
And
see,
I don't know how to feel about that.
Well, see, here's
you should feel dirty, Ross. Dirty, and like
I kind of do.
EA temporarily created a brand new studio to try and revive Command and Conquer called Victory Games.
Yeah.
Victory Games was leading the charge on what was going to be Generals 2, and it was going to be kind of an online free-to-play-ish experience.
Eventually, it started out as a typical RTS entry,
Right.
but then they changed the direction and wanted to make it a online game as a service with
Right.
Call of Duty-like progression.
Right. And when that really didn't really appeal to the fans anymore, they wholly dropped it like a rock. I'm wondering if they may go back to it because of all the assets created.
At first, the studio said, okay, we see this isn't what you guys want. We're going to make the game you want. We're going to start over from scratch. But after that announcement was put out, EA said, you're closed. You're going somewhere else.
And that's EA being Unicronic Arts.
Yeah. But with
Unicron.
with what we've seen from the CNC remaster and other EA products more recently, it seems like they've had something of a change of heart. We'll see.
Yeah,
Jedi Fallen Order is another example. EA for the longest time was saying the single player experience is dead. It's not profitable. It's not something we're making anymore. We're making nothing but online experiences, multiplayer, anything we can do to get microtransactions out of you guys.
Yeah.
So,
well,
and that's another thing. There are no microtransactions in this game. Everything that is in it, from the Red Alert, the CNC and Red Alert campaigns, a huge bonus gallery library of behind-the-scenes footage recovered from the archives is unlockable within the game.
It's also got all of the DLC from the console versions.
Oh.
And console missions that
Sounds
I
like
had never
socialism
seen
to
before.
me.
Well, you're right. It's partial socialism on the nod side.
Well, the Soviet campaign
on
is
the
very
Soviet
socialist.
side. So,
Hail Kane.
You can play Cuba in Red Alert 2.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So
Yeah, but
I
if you-
can go
if you
back to
wanna-
my roots.
If you want to play Cuba, then just get Tropico.
I do. I have it, and so does Son.
well, next month, Tropico 6 has a free weekend on Steam. So,
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's go to our final topic before what are we watching? And I don't know if this one's just sort of a hot take, but there was news last week that the Internet Archive, which is mostly known for the Wayback Machine, which archives everything on the web.
It sure does.
It's how we get so many wonderful Alec Peterisms.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
where we
it
are
is.
able to find out the truth behind so many lies that are told by people because you're able to look at old versions of their web pages.
And Tumblr accounts.
But the Internet Archive is actually a huge operation. I actually got the chance to tour it last year. It's housed, as you can see on the screen here, it's housed in an old or former Christian Scientist church headquarters in the Richmond district in San Francisco. It's beautiful inside. In fact, the computers, the servers that hold the Internet Archive are in this huge gallery, like, where the church services were held, and they're up in the back of the auditorium and behind these black glass doors, and you can see all the lights blinking on the servers and stuff too. And then they have this this amazing sculpture of people sitting in the pews. Like they're pews still from the original pews are still there, and they have these sculpted figures of people who are sitting in some of the pews, looking towards the stage where they hold tours that go through there all the time and do lectures and stuff. So there's still lots of empty pews, but there's this whole quarter of the auditorium that's just these sculptures, and one of them actually is. What's his name? Aaron Schwartz. Remember the kid who
the RSS feed guy.
Yes, and who also, he killed himself over a copyright issue. God, was that 10 years ago already?
He was basically being arrested by the federal government for using his student credentials to take like all of that protected study material and share it with the internet for free.
Right, I think it was from JSTOR that he did, and he set up this secret server in a closet at MIT or Harvard, I forget which school, and that basically siphoned all this information and then published it on the web for free. And the federal government decided to come down on him really hard. And just hounded him, and he ended up killing himself. It was really quite sad. But they, as a sort of pioneer of internet freedom, free information, getting people access to free information, he's honored with his own. He is one of the sculptors in the at the Internet Archive, and it's sitting in one of the pews. I think I have a picture of it somewhere. I'll try to dig it up. Anyway, the point of this story, though, is also related to copyright, which is the news that the Internet Archive was making available to the internet 1.4 million books. And they were doing this because libraries are closed and people can't get into them. And they called it their National Emergency Public Library. And it was only meant to be temporary, but it was to give people access to books that they've digitized and store. The Internet Archive strives to store everything that people create. So it's not just websites, it's also books, it's also movies, it's also TV transitions. They used to have all of the old broadcasts from MTV, which Viacom actually ended up forcing them to remove. I got to see the place where they're digitizing old films. And anyway, long story short, the five major publishers went after the Internet Archive, saying that it was engaging in massive copyright infringement, and we're seeking damages. And for 1.4, multiply 1.4 million books by $150,000, and that's the level of damages you're talking about.
What was
and
the level of screwed? No, thank you.
Yeah.
what
And
was the numbers?
it was 1.4 million books times 150,000 per infringement.
No,
So-
thank you.
So
Yikes.
that's the level. Now, it's not likely they would ever get anything near that kind of in the real world if the lawsuit were to move forward. But
I hope not. That's more money that's around in the world.
yeah, it's huge.
Oh,
And-
the thing is, it's a threatening gesture, so it will never be done
Yeah.
again.
Well, and this week, the Internet Archive announced it was closing the National Emergency Library, but not because of the lawsuit, interestingly, or only partially because of the lawsuit, but mostly because people weren't checking out their books for longer than they were under their old system, which was for 2 weeks. And because their argument was, hey, we're just doing what a library does. We purchased all these books and we're lending them to people. And because real libraries are closed, this is a service we believe is a good service to provide to people. And the publishers did not like that, and
Well,
we're going after them
here-
pretty hard.
Here's the problem with digital content. If you know how to do it, it's very easy to snag a book or snag a video and get around any type of copyright protection to keep people from saying stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but that's not really the point here. The point here is that this is a major, source on the internet that's well known. It's not like a torrent site. This is a hub, and so that's where the argument lies in that it's not a matter of, if you know how to do it, you can do it through nefarious methods. This was a legitimate source for people to go to get these. Correct, Carlos? Is that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, and the mission of the Internet Archive is to archive human knowledge, particularly because we're creating so much of it digitally, and there's no other way to keep it.
The Internet Archive is literally our memory alpha.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
is. It really is, and it's
Or,
as
the
technological.
hub
I
for
mean,
Marvel.
and I mean, they liken themselves to a modern day Library of Alexandria, and their point is like if we don't archive this, no one will, and all of this rich cultural content will be lost, and the problem with this lawsuit, which will probably go away because the Internet Archive took it down. The problem with that, of course, is that the lawsuit calls into question just the very act of archiving, which the Internet Archive is doing for so many things: books, TV shows, music,
News articles.
They even have video games. You can go on
Yeah.
with your web browser and play old video games because they've created these web-based emulators that you can use. I mean, it's utterly fascinating.
I'm playing the Star Trek game right now.
There is
I
a problem.
I found
There is
an old stunt game that I used to play all the time, and a game called Scorched Earth, which I used to play just like crazy because it was free.
There is a problem though. Creators are not seeing anything for this. They're seeing the initial buy of whatever their product was, and then it's being multiplied for nothing on their part. Now, one person could argue that creators are getting exposure or longevity, but that doesn't put food in the mouth of the creators, and that doesn't incentivize your creative class.
The games on the Internet Archive aren't.
That's not what I'm talking about. I
He's
know
talking
exactly
about-
what you're talking about. Those are games given away by the companies that they no longer support. I understand that.
Okay.
But in terms of books and in terms of movies and in terms of music, all of that is owned by people who worked hard to produce it. And I don't agree with the Internet Archive. I don't care how noble their goals are. It simply takes away from the creators.
So do
So,
you
how
hold the
do
same
libraries
principle
work?
for a normal library?
Yeah, so how does libraries
Yeah, that's
Normal
exactly
library is
how normally
different.
works.
Normal library is a different service.
how?
Normal because it provides you a physical or sometimes digital content for a limited amount of time only.
That's how this works too.
But is the digital content that is being delivered being copied and recopied?
Well, technically, anytime you transfer anything from one computer to another, it's being copied. So
Yes, but you know what I'm saying. Is it being redistributed without gain of the creators? I don't care
well-
about the corporations. What I'm saying is that
no,
you're-
believe me, I'm sympathetic. I am a creator.
I know that.
I create things that I hope people buy. I want them to buy so I can keep creating.
Being,
Exactly.
However, I think the Internet Archive is a little different because I want the things that I create to be able to last a century from now that people can find. And there has to be a balance between, the Internet Archive is not a commercial concern. It is not a pirate site. They're trying to be a storehouse of all the things that human beings are creating right now in a world where technology has made the act of creation democratized to a level we've never seen in human history before.
Raul,
It's important the things that they're digitizing would be lost. Those movies that you're talking about, the creators deserve money from. Nobody's making money from them. There's no way to distribute them anymore. They would otherwise be dissolving literally in archives. The films fall apart literally. Someone has to preserve this, and no one in a purely capitalistic society will do that because there's no money to be made from it.
we used to
That's
have
why
an
we have an
organization-
Internet Archive.
Yeah, but the Internet Archive is duplicated by the Library of Congress, where all things with copyrights go.
Yes and no. The Library of Congress, for example, does not hold all of MTV's broadcasts. They just don't. So
Does the Library of Congress have however many seasons of The Love Boat? Because I'd really like to try to find that.
I have no idea, but possibly. But
Raul,
the other
I
thing
think
about
what you're
the
getting at
Library of
is-
Congress is the Library of Congress is primarily just for storage. It's hard to get stuff. You can't walk into the Library of Congress and check out a book.
Unless you're Nicolas Cage.
Well, he had to abduct
In
the
National
president
Treasure.
to do that.
In
Nice.
National Treasure.
Like it
Raul-
doesn't do anyone any good for these movies to be preserved in a place to which no one has access, or only scholars have access.
I mean,
I
my
think-
biggest frustration with Hollywood and media in general is that there is classic content that I want that I can't get, and it seems like that would be the perfect place for the Internet Archive. For whatever reason, the studios don't want to make, the reboot of The Love Boat, the '90s reboot of The Love Boat that followed Voyager, available. And there's an episode where there's a reunion of the original Love Boat cast that I want to see. So what is my alternative? If the content creators aren't being paid because they're not being made available to the public to begin with, why shouldn't I be able to go find a way to watch it even through more unscrupulous means?
Well, your
Because it's
alternative,
not yours. It's
Well,
not
hold on.
yours. That's the whole problem.
Jason. First and foremost, your alternative is to not be lame. That's the number one. So let's get that out there. But I actually, exciting and new.
Come aboard.
We're
expecting you.
I
Okay,
think what
so,
Raul
but I-
is
I-
getting
I'm-
at is that his impression is that people are taking things from the Internet Archive and then duplicating them, like you'd get a book from a library and make photocopies of it.
I'm not
Am I
aware
right?
that's what's happening though, Raul.
Do you
But
know for
at
sure?
least in the stories that I've seen, that is not what the publishers are alleging. They're not alleging that people are pirating their material. They're alleging that by taking the material and making it available online for free to anyone for a limited time is wrong.
And there's nothing stopping a library from a library can't stop someone from doing that either.
Yeah, but a library is held in public trust.
No,
The
they're
Internet
private
Archive
libraries.
is a private organization. I think that's what you guys are missing.
Well, it's a 501c3.
Yes.
And there's lots of private libraries. Library there isn't a requirement for a library to be a public institution.
Yeah.
And public libraries
No,
are usually
there's-
funded by
there's-
cities, not by the federal government.
Although they do receive some funding from the federal government.
Yes,
Well,
but typically they're run and managed by cities and smaller organizations.
Yeah.
Look,
No, I mean
look,
the Internet Archive receives some.
Look,
some,
I ain't gonna
federal
lie
money
here.
through
Okay,
grants.
Jason brings up a very good point about this. Is that when it becomes particularly problematic for the consumer when there's especially for consumers of media, when there's an item out there that you want and you're more than willing to pay for it, yet it's simply not made available. I'll give you 2 prime examples of this that I have gone to ulterior sources to get because it just doesn't exist. One, the series 7 Days, which is a fucking tragedy that show's never.
I love that show.
Never had a DVD release. I've had to get it from people I've had to get it on back when iOffer was a thing. I had to get DVDs made of when it was rebroadcast on Spike. And I've had to, and also I've gotten it from torrent sites. The other one, and this is the most disgusting
The
thing
Star
ever.
Wars Holiday Special.
That's one I hadn't thought about that. Lancelot Link's Secret Chip. Look it up.
Oh yeah,
It's
Lancelot Link Secret
Chip. Yep, you know it. That finally came out on DVD. I was on a fucking wait list for 6 years for that. Okay, I am not kidding you. Chimpanzees dressed in human outfits, driving around in little cars.
It was ridiculous, but
it was
so much
ridiculous.
fun if you were 10 in the 70s.
Yes.
Or a kid
35.
a kid watching Nickelodeon in the 90s, which they replayed it.
They did. It was they absolutely did.
On the subject that shows that followed Voyager that I can't find, Deadly Games.
Oh, that's another one too.
Becky
Yeah.
Bennett.
How about the Sentinel?
Terrible
Try to find the
show,
Sentinel.
but had a lot of TNG alumni.
What was the one that followed Voyager that had Gates McFadden in it?
Sentinel.
Not sure what that is.
Sentinel.
Not sure. Remember the Sentinel? That can't get that.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
It's because they hate us. But there's this market for things out there that and I'm not looking to redistribute it. And I gladly send Paramount the $40 for the box set. I don't care. Just make the damn thing.
But that's a failure. That's a failure on the owner's part. That's
Right,
not
exactly.
a failure.
It's not a failure.
But again, you do not own the content.
Understood.
It's not. But it doesn't belong to you. Fans do not own the content in which they're fandom of.
Hey, we all own Lancelot's Secret Chip, okay?
Not if you ask
I
Alan
only
No,
Peters.
I mean
like one.
I hear your argument, Raul, and I can't disagree with it on the basis of sort
That's
of just
good because I used to do this for a living.
well, yeah, me too. But at the same time, I don't want the fact that that
The arguing, not the creating.
yeah, right. I can't. I don't like the fact that it's not profitable to make copies of Lancelot Link Secret Chimp, although apparently now it is available to.
I think
people
we've
who
started
want
a
it.
trend, petition, if you will.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't argue that. I'm disappointed in the fact that capitalism means that, and copyright means that a lot of really valuable cultural material will be lost, and there needs to be some place to retain that.
Yeah, this is the other side of this argument.
And make it available to people.
I'm not arguing against. You're not wrong, Raul. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying the problem here is that this media becomes, yes, it is property, okay, but it becomes something more than that in the culture than just property. I'm not saying, again, I understand they own the rights to it. What the concern is if it gets lost. That's the issue here. And by these companies no longer having an interest because it's not profitable for them, that doesn't mean that it's not valuable to the culture, because
Perfect example, Doctor Who. Perfect example, Doctor Who.
Yeah, exactly. That shit's gone.
The first 3 and 4 Doctors, there are episodes that don't exist anymore.
That shit is gone.
Because BBC saw no value in keeping all of that old film, and they just burnt it all.
From what I understand, didn't they have it on video cassette and they just recorded over it?
So some of them were on your reel-to-reel film, like for a theater. Like that was how they found so many episodes of Doctor Who. They found like a BBC substation in Africa where all that stuff was meant to be destroyed.
Yep.
But the problem is not about individual fandoms not being able to get to their thing. What you're talking about is copyright law, and copyright law builds wealth in this country. That's exactly what it has done, and individuals that have that have the ability to build wealth, which is generational to the creator and the owner. Some things go into public because of the laws, the way laws work, depending on what type of thing you're talking about. Some things go into public usage. But in general, these copyright laws built America.
Nobody disagrees with you on that point.
Right.
I'm not fighting a lost cause here. I'm just saying what I believe is the truth here, which is, unfortunately, if they're not producing it, they're missing an opportunity with certain segment of the population. That's their fault. But
yeah, we know. But well, here's my point on this. I think the issue here is that we're having two different arguments here. Your argument is completely valid from a legal side, absolutely 100% valid. We're kind of approaching this from the philosophical aspect
and the cultural aspect.
And the cultural aspect. I mean, there's a reason, Raul, why everything eventually goes into the public domain, because Congress understood that that you could allowed people to be owners of intellectual property for a limited time. And the reason for that is because they believed that all of society was entitled to that intellectual property eventually. Because knowledge belongs to a culture. And that you incentivize the creation of knowledge, you incentivize the creation of intellectual property by creating a system through which creators can gain wealth, as you argue. But from a philosophical and a legal and a constitutional standpoint, the recognition is that ultimately this information needs to belong to the public. And I believe that the Internet Archive embodies that in a way that no other institution in this country does. And that stuff will be lost. There are Hollywood movies that are literally disintegrating in vaults in Hollywood.
One of them was Star Wars.
That they're just gone.
Bethlehem was rescued.
So we're looking for a happy medium here where we can agree with what your point is, Raul, but that
you don't have to agree with me.
Well, I do agree with you. I do agree with you. I'm just saying to you
stop it. Stop it. It doesn't make for compelling television.
Cut that
We're
shit
supposed
out.
to fight and argue.
Jesus. You people, I come back to fight and you're like, we agree with you. God, shut up.
I'm still fighting with you. I'm fighting with you still.
Am I still the contrarian, or is Raul?
Well, we're glad to have you back, Raul. Clearly.
Raul, I got some more. I got some more news from Raul. I am pregnant with your baby.
Stop it! That was a secret. That was one summer in Carlos's cottage. That was it.
It meant nothing.
Screen slap.
It meant nothing.
Screen slap.
All right. Well, I
Meanwhile-
think we've staked out our positions well here. Great argument. We'll see what happens in the future, because even though this particular lawsuit may go away, and that's not guaranteed, by the
Hey,
way.
Internet Archive, # Free Song of the South.
It was actually bound to happen. I'm surprised it took this long for it to happen.
Meanwhile, I'm on DOSBox.
Yep, I'm on DOSBox playing Leisure Suit Larry 6.
Hey,
God.
before the show, I had a Super Famicom open, and I was playing Ghouls and Goblins.
Yeah, it's
Looking at
fascinating. If you're ever in San Francisco, you can, if you write them in advance, they do tours all the time. I was lucky because I know a guy who's a volunteer there, who I actually know from Star Trek, and he invited me to go along with him to this special
Nerds of a
tour.
feather, I say.
Yes, indeed. It was great. He's also a filmmaker, independent filmmaker in San Francisco, and so we have a lot of things in common. Anyway, so I appreciated that. I got to eat lunch there. It was a good lunch. All right, so that winds up that final formal topic for the episode today. Let's go to our final discussion, and that is, what are we watching? We had to skip it last week, so we've got 2 weeks worth of what are we watching. So please be concise, because we're running a little long, and but we are, of course, interested in what you all have been watching. So let's start this week with The Eyebrows of Doom.
So, I finally watched Crisis.
Wow, CW Crisis.
Yeah, it was quite the ride. It certainly lived up to all the hype. Geez, where to even begin there? It was quite the payoff after years and years of buildup. Oliver's arc from beginning to end was a lot of fun. It was really cool to see, and confusing to see everyone kind of united in the end. I'm really happy to see Black Lightning as part of the core crew now, and I want to go back and watch that show. It's the character seems pretty fun. And storm and lightning-based powers are something of a favorite of mine, so that'll be pretty cool. In all, it was quite a lot of fun to watch. Ray was a little confused at points. She wasn't sure if each of the different Earths was supposed to be significant or not, and it was really cool to see the crossover with Grant Gustin and Ezra Miller as the two different Flashes. That was interesting.
That almost didn't happen, actually, because of Ezra Miller's problems. So it was supposed to be a longer scene than that, actually, and they had to re-edit to get usable footage.
I thought it was fun the fact that Ezra Miller's Flash didn't have a name. I'm also the Flash. The what?
That's right. I forgot about that. And I love Ezra Miller,
and
actually.
Just all of the different nods to the different DC shows throughout the years, like Birds of Prey.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't expect to see that.
Out walking his dog when the antimatter wave hit.
Yes. I was really, 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 really happy to see Kevin Conroy in live action as Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
As tragic as that appearance was.
Spoilers.
Well, he's not giving anything away. He's just saying it's tragic, which Batman is.
Yeah, all the different iterations of Clark Kent was really fun.
The ones that survived, anyways.
Brandon Routh redeemed everything that went wrong with his theatrical version of Superman.
Not his theatrical version. It's not his fault.
No. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
I mean, he proved that the character, as played by him, was viable and could have been a great.
Look what came about of it. Because of that, we have another Superman show.
I just wanted to let you guys know. I don't even know if this was advertised in the sale, but I just got my Arrow season 8. Is that what it is? The last season, right?
Yeah.
And guess what's included in it on Blu-ray? Every single Crisis episode is included.
Good.
Oh, really?
Good.
Wow.
So that's going to make it a whole lot easier for me to just jump right into that. So
I had to jump through hoops to get to all the episodes because Batwoman is not on Netflix.
Yeah, but it is on Roku through the CW channel.
I don't.
Actually,
have
I think
Roku.
it is now. I think Batwoman is on Netflix now, isn't it? I thought it just dropped.
Crisis is on, or not Crisis. Sorry, Legends is on Netflix.
Wednesday.
Yeah, but I thought Batman. I thought Batwoman was.
No,
dropping
Batwoman's
off.
on HBO Max.
Legends was rough at first.
Oh, you're
Batwoman-
right. It is on HBO Max.
Batwoman is not
So
on
I
Netflix.
had to buy the specific episode of both Batwoman and Legends in order to get the whole
By
thing.
the
That
way-
happened with me in Breaking Bad.
You
Because I-
It happened one episode too, way back in the day.
well, no, I ended up having to buy about half a season. Worth.
Well, I got it's like funny. It's like with Amazon, it's
wait.
like still on my titles you own. I still got that one random episode of Breaking Bad on there. Yeah,
I have one random episode of The West Wing, and it's in low resolution. It's like postage stamp sized.
And I gotta say, seeing Rory as a romance author was just priceless.
That was pretty good. That was pretty
Yeah.
And in addition to Crisis, I also wrapped up She-Ra, Netflix's She-Ra, and I gotta say that's a very brave show.
It's a good show. I like it.
It's a show meant for kids, but is very intelligently written. It's extremely inclusive too. They include LGBT characters of all kinds, hero characters that are of multiple different body types, and wow, it was really something. And the finale, like a show of its type would, wasn't resolved through violence, but with a commitment to love, which I really liked. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. The acting, the writing, the art is all spectacular, and yeah, that's about it.
All right, great. Thanks, Ross. All right, let's move over to Travis Litton. Travis, what have you been watching these last couple of weeks?
Well, had you asked me that last week, the answer wouldn't have changed too much. I haven't been watching a heck of a lot. I watched some episodes of King of the Hill.
Propane.
Propane and propane accessories.
I actually spent some time playing Halo 3 ODST for the very first time, and I beat the campaign in about 3 days. I talked a bit about it in the chat and expressed a bit of a meh expression for it. I'm trying to get a group together to play an online 4-player co-op session of all the Halo game campaigns to build up some excitement for Halo later this year.
Okay, Justin. He's been drinking mango Ritas all night. Come on.
He's a little sloshed.
Mango Ritas.
But I think the only other show of note that I've watched, I've been actually watching a hell of a lot of Malcolm in the Middle lately.
That was a great show.
I have been.
Fun.
It's a wonderful show. I love Malcolm in the Middle. I can say it's my favorite sitcom of all time, but it definitely has that vibe of I'll just watch one more episode, just one more. Like when I get on a Malcolm in the Middle tangent, like I will go through dozens of these episodes. Like just the other day I was on season 6 episode 1 and I'm already on season 6 episode 17, so it's like, Jesus Christ, I gotta slow down on this show.
It's a shame he had his accident, huh? Malcolm from Malcolm in the Middle. It gave him short-term memory loss, and he doesn't even remember having acted in Malcolm in the Middle. That's why it's the middle now.
Oh, what?
Random knowledge is random, I guess, huh?
Boy, that was random.
Yeah, that was very random. Who's next?
All right, who's next? That would be Sean O'Halloran.
Okay, so I've been watching. I started on Community, and I never realized how good that show was because I didn't really watch it when it first aired. It's occurred to me that Community is, my God, it is so similar to Rick and Morty. It's terrifying. It's a live action Rick and Morty. It really is, and it's like it's like. Yeah, Dan Harmon. Yeah, you've got quite the shtick here. So it's not a complaint. It's just an observation. I really have come to really love this show. It is like I said earlier in the chat. It's the anti Big Bang Theory. It celebrates geek culture. It doesn't make fun of it. And that's what I always hated about Big Bang Theory. That I always felt it was mocking geek culture.
I
Bazinga.
had, yeah, I guess. I watched a documentary last night called "Let It Fall." This is, I don't know if you guys have been seeing some Netflix. With the latest update, it offers you a chance to take a look at their Black Lives Matter collection, and there's obviously a theme here. But this is Let It Fall is a documentary that culminates. It's basically another progression of how the '92 LA riots happened. I watched another documentary on the same subject about a month ago called LA '92. This is a little bit different though, because this was from the perspective of all the parties involved in this, and this goes back to how the tactics for the LAPD changed in 1982 going forward into what culminated in the Rodney King incident, of course, and then we get the prosecution of the cops involved, and then their acquittal, and then of course the riots, everything involved in that. And it was very interesting. The interviews are fantastic from all the people that were involved in this. And when I say the people involved, I'm talking about from everybody to the people who are on the streets that day, the Korean store owners. You've got the police, all these different voices that were involved in this documentary. It's very interesting. It's appropriate for right now to understand where this Black Lives Matters movement is today, and why it is today, and in this history in this country that we have with this. So yeah, highly recommend it. It's called Let It Fall. And the other thing I watched today that I was in my queue, it just dropped like last week, I think, called Black AF, and it is funny. It's a very poignant series. It's made in the style of the Office and Parks and Rec, but it's the guy who does it. It's focused on him, but it's like a fictional version of his it's like semi-autobiographical, well, he does it. So it's the guy who created Blackish, the on ABC, but it's really funny. I watched the first episode today, and it's hilarious, and it's got excellent social commentary at the same time. And if you like shows like The Office and Parks and Rec, you'll like this a lot. So that's it. That's all I've been watching.
All right. Thank you, Sean. And let's move over to you, Raul. As you return to the Super Geeks this week, what have you been watching?
I needed to find a show that was acceptable with my mother that is getting older now, and she likes creative shows. So what I ended up downloading and we ended up watching during the week was Lego Masters, with the voice of Batman in Batman Lego, the Batman Lego movie, as the host. And let me tell you something: these are some creative people. These are some really creative people.
Will Arnett, by the way.
Will Arnett, thank you. I appreciate it. But I forgot I had a block.
Okay.
But Will Arnett hosts it. He's funny. He's unpredictable. The guests are unusual, like you can imagine. There's everything from cops to alternative cosplayers. The hilarious show. Really good for the family. Really good show. I recommend it highly.
All right, awesome. And son, what were you watching this week?
Okay, so like Ross, I watched Crisis this week, and that's probably going to be the best episode of Batwoman I've ever seen. She was
Ouch.
Only 1/3 of the episode had anything to do with Batwoman at all. So that was good. I do not like that character. I don't. something just puts me off about that
It's
character.
the hair for me.
I think it's the attitude.
It's
Like, even when she's trying to be nice, there's just this snide hint on it, and I'm like, that's not my bag, baby.
That's veteran grump right there.
That was awesome.
But like, I've been watching The Flash, and oh my God, The Flash, quit it, get better writers, for the love of God. Oh, like, holy shit! I'm watching this episode where Barry is getting on to Cisco for having stolen this super cure for everything, right? And he goes, "You stole it. You even justified it." And the only thing running through my mind is, Barry Allen, you literally just teamed up with Cisco to break into McCullough Industries to steal this thing in the first place with a justification. And you have the audacity to berate Cisco for doing the same thing. How dare you?
Yes.
Because scripts.
I mean, oh my God.
Because plots.
Because scripts.
And now I'm watching episodes where there's a mirror Iris running around.
Yeah,
and Iris is stuck in a mirror with a lady who can control mirrors.
The bad thing about that whole plot is it got cut short because of COVID. So there's gonna be there's a lot of stuff towards the end of it that's kind of like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? Yeah, I noticed it seemed like really off from their normal line of storytelling, but it had to be COVID related because they said they had to cut. I don't remember how many episodes did they have to cut out of this season.
Well, there's like 20-something episodes, so it's pretty much a full season already.
Yeah, it's close to a full season, but they didn't get to finish it. That's what happened with one of my favorite shows, The Good Fight, which was supposed to have 10 episodes, and it only made it to 7.
Ooh.
But yeah, no, I've just I love The Flash. It's like the only one that's really gotten me hooked to it, and it's also so fucking aggravating having piss poor writing.
Oh, I do not disagree with you at all. This is the week I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, son.
Scary. This is scary. The world must truly be
2020, man. 2020.
2020. The world's been turned on its head.
Yep.
You know, what's funny is Augustine shared a post earlier about my encounter saying the world's supposed to end next week. I'm like, well, you know what? If everybody agrees with everybody, it just might happen.
As long as it starts with the Yellowstone supervolcano, so I die instantly.
That's true. You would go. You would go instantly.
You know what? You would. That would trigger the pneumatic fault line because I would be right behind you. So yeah, okay, I can go with that.
Yeah, it's pretty much possibly the doom of human civilization.
Let's not get Travis started because he'll go off.
Yeah, no, everything's fine, Travis. Everything's fine.
It's fine.
It could be thousands, tens of thousands
He
of
seems
years
to be a
away.
bit too preoccupied with these things.
So what's Justin been watching?
Well, like you and Ross, I watched Crisis. Got caught up on Legends, which this season it really kind of twisted up the formula a bit. It was a pleasant surprise, really, for what they did things. But yeah, there's a plot twist at the end of season 5 of Legends. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to spoil it. It'll be, but from what I understand, it's going to lead into a alien type of week thing whenever the show resumes next season. So, that to look forward to. Other than Legends and of course Crisis, since everything's now online. I've been watching Voyager. I just finished season 6, and that's pretty much about it. That's pretty much about it.
Okay, and Jason?
We watched the Jeffrey Epstein docuseries
Ooh,
on Netflix.
on Netflix, yeah.
Yeah. That guy was a son of a bitch.
That guy.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
You thought Tiger King was fucked up.
Yeah, like Tiger King has nothing on Jeffrey Epstein. No, and I mean, like, it was, what kills me is the amount of influence that he wielded.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious, like Alex, whatever, he's, the prosecutor in Florida, like it's clear that like they would have had to have known just how evil he is. So you got to wonder, like, what kind of shit did he have on whoever could, either on Alex, the state's attorney, or whoever could have influenced the state's attorney. Like he really, like, his business was extortion. Like, he pimped out girls to get dirt on politicians, so that when justice came a calling, he could, just say, "Oh, hey, I have this picture of you and a 14-year-old girl." You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, it's just very surreal. And then you think about the people of power and influence that were always around him, whether it's
Clinton.
current president, previous presidents, princes of England, just all sorts of power and stuff, and you just,
Yeah.
Pimps are the lowest form of life. Period.
It's no wonder he didn't kill himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to think about that for a moment.
It's been
Yeah,
glad
he
that
actually,
meme died down, though.
his story actually plays a big part in this season of the Good Fight as well. And it goes off on this very weird tangent at the very end of the season. I won't spoil it for you, except to say that if you think Jeffrey Epstein was a dick, you're going to have that confirmed for you. That's all I'm going to say. So you'll have to wait until you get to that part of the show. You should watch it. The Good Fight is a great show. Anything else, Jason?
No, I've been, watching episodes of The Office to coincide with my listening of Office Ladies podcast, and then been listening to or watching episodes of Scrubs to coincide with Fake Doctors, Real Friends, the podcast with Zach Braff and Donald Faison.
Okay. And have we gotten everyone else? I think we have. Yes. Yes. Okay. I'll go through my list really quickly so we can wind up. On Disney Plus, Artemis Fowl dropped today, so I started watching that. I've been watching more episodes of the Disney Gallery, which is the show that's all the behind the scenes on The Mandalorian. That's been as a filmmaker, that's been fascinating to watch. Several movies, because of the Black Lives Matter protests, several seminal movies made by African-American filmmakers are being made available for free on various platforms, Amazon, Apple, etc. I think Google Play as well. They include Just Mercy, Michael B. Jordan's film, and Jamie Foxx, who's brilliant in it. I watched that. I have not yet watched Selma, directed by Anna DuVernay, and 13th, which are also both available for free for this month for people who want to open their minds to more of the historical experience of African Americans in the country. I have been keeping up on Run, the HBO series, which sometimes I think it's really tedious, and then they'll do something interesting. So I'm still hooked, I guess. But that, of course, stars Domhnall Gleeson, who, of course, you all know better as General Hux.
Yep.
Or General Shucks, as I like to call him. And then there's one on my about to start watching list, which is on Amazon Prime, called Vast of Night, which is set in the 50s. And it's sort of a sci-fi, it's more thriller than sci-fi, but it's got some sci-fi elements to it, apparently. And that looks pretty interesting as well. So that's me this week, and I'll have more next week, obviously.
Well,
all right. Any final thoughts before we sign off for this week? Otherwise, go ahead.
Has Patrick Duncan McNeil started his Voyager podcast thing yet?
You mean Robert
Yeah.
Duncan McNeil?
McNeil?
Him and Garrett Wang, right? Aren't they?
Yeah.
two of them doing it?
Garrett Wong, not Wang.
Delta Flyers.
Look, I'll admit I'm not good with names.
The only thing less interesting than Star Trek Voyager is that podcast.
You
And I'm-
actually listened to it?
I've tried, and I'm the king of rewatch podcast listening. Gone through West Wing Weekly, now going through, Office Ladies and, and Real Doctor or Fake Doctors, Real Friends. I really try to get into it, but I don't care about Voyager enough to listen to, these two men talk about the show.
Is it them or is it the content? Because I don't find Garrett very. I never found.
I think it's them. I think in a lot of ways, I think it's them. Like
They
again,
don't
like
have good chemistry.
like when you listen to I don't know. I mean, again, if you go back and listen to the West Wing Weekly, they had great chemistry. Was it Rishi K. Sherway and Josh Molina, and they really were engaged in the show.
Josh Molina is brilliant.
Yes. And then now with Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey talking about The Office, they bring in like Rainn Wilson and they bring in John Krasinski. They brought in the showrunner whose name is escaping me right at the moment. They brought in directors. It's really engaging, content because you're hearing about like how the show was made and how what was improv, and you're hearing all these behind the scenes tidbits. It's just I just don't have that. I don't see that engaging dynamic between these two co-stars, and they're not like, it's just, I don't know. It's like,
For me, it tends to only shine a spotlight on the very flawed execution of Voyager. The decisions that Rick Berman made around how to, holding back his actors. When is that ever a smart idea?
The entire run of the show.
Oh God. No,
there are individual
Anger
episodes
is-
of Voyager that I definitely like and do rewatch,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I just feel it's so flawed.
yeah, when Voyager was good, it was really good until the last 5 minutes when they hit the reset button.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things I noticed that they did, you would get character progression. Like, say, 7-9, when they bring her on, they would start to progress her and get her to change and, almost feel like she's not, this complete stranger. And then they would put her back into a Borg episode where she's almost like she was just a brand new person again. Like, they hit reset on her. And they would do that every few episodes, every time she would try to progress. And it's very noticeable. With the Doctors, same thing. They would hit the reset button every few episodes. They never
Yep.
they never let
Well,
anyone-
we've gone over this territory many times before. I think we've staked out where we
need
where
to
we
do a
each fall
Star
on
Trek show. We need to
on
do a
Voyager.
Star Trek show where we actually go over this stuff with all the episodes.
I don't know, very special
Yeah.
Super Geeks.
a very special Super Geeks. That's what we'll call
Hey,
it.
there we go.
All right. So program note, we will be back as usual a week from now. We're looking forward to finding out when season 3 of Discovery is going to be released so we can start planning for our review show of it and start planning on bringing in a variety of special guests.
Liar, you just want Index back.
I definitely
Yes.
want Index back,
Yes.
although maybe we should call you Zora then.
Well, hey, I'm okay with that.
Okay, cool. I do love me some Index though. Flash those baby blues at me. Okay, so thank you folks at home for joining us for another week. Hope we were able to illuminate you, or that you can illuminate us at some point. You can comment on our YouTube and Facebook pages, and otherwise we look forward to seeing you again next week. Everybody! This is not a sing-along. We always do sing-alongs now.
What is going on?
It's the Love Boat theme.
and
I understand that.
I don't know the Love Boat song.
Come aboard.
Yeah,
We're expecting you and love.
You know, in some